curfew, and they're used to being. The days are over.
They're calling for what, 4 to 6 inches now?
Is it now? Because this morning it was an
Wednesday,
inch.
Thursday. Yeah, that's what they were just saying on the radio
Wow.
in Kansas, north central Kansas and
Southeastern Kansas.
northeast Kansas.
Because this morning I was watching 10-11 and they said, like we were in the heavier spot, but they still said like an inch precipitation. And that was rain and snow.
Yeah.
You know, total. But
That last snow that they got east of here, that was all they were supposed to get. It was just a dusting. And then I think St. Joe ended up with like 6 to 8.
Test.
Saturday they pulled the hose to fill their water completely, like all of it, into their pen.
yeah. Like Lawrence pigs out there, you have to clip, like put a chain around and put it through the thing. But we had to put clips on them because they will play with that until they can get it open.
It's like, oh my God. I mean, and I had it drug all
Yes.
the way across towards the high, or towards the street, so it would drain out, so it would freeze. So they had to like,
What do I need to do to?
Feels like it's very close to the microphone.
So I can, oh, I just. So I could sign check. Oh, Jason just
I'm just being, yeah.
have it.
do you want to do the other half? Well, yeah.
Sorry. Are they in a certain order? Do you
Yeah,
usually do like this?
Yep.
Is that what you do?
propane, buses.
Okay, great, thank you.
Propane buses. Interesting.
Thank you.
Lisa messaged me and said she got out of work a little late, so it probably won't be much before 6. She thought she'd be here by 6.
Back down to those guys.
Better-
Good luck. You can call the meeting to order. And then our student presentation, 3 of the 4 students that were supposed to do it ended up having conflicts. And then the other one student didn't want to do it by himself. So we're going to have to scratch that for tonight. I told him that's no problem. Maybe later in the year, if they can rally the troops, they'll get into to do that presentation. One of them was sick, or two of them were sick, I think. One of them was Andy, and wrestling practice didn't get done in time for him to make it over.
And when is state? Is it this week?
I think it's next
Next week.
Saturday, right? Is it Friday, Saturday?
That's in Omaha, I think. Yeah, down at the, what is it called, down Sage High.
Okay.
Used to be. Lisa, are you planning on riding the bus with me? Yes. No, I
Thursday,
saw,
Friday,
you know, I
Saturday, that's
saw it.
probably, I'm sure it multiple
I had
days,
it on my
unless
phone.
different classes, I'm sure at different times on different days. And I haven't been on,
I
that's
did
a question for
I
Barry.
did a training and stuff, so that was.
Lots of times when he
I
has. to
have an
stay on
idea
sick,
of what
you
it's
get
gonna
emails
be,
from him
so
all
I
day.
can figure it
This
out.
wasn't one of those days. So he must have been, kids must have truly been sick.
Yeah, yeah, kind of, it was good. Better, you know, different than just a job fair where they walk around,
So, yeah, I
but they
think
have,
I say this joke.
they have certain tasks that they have to do during each session to earn.
Pay for juice plus probably.
Yeah, so if they want to do this job, right now you gotta go visit a community college, you gotta go visit a four-year college, and then come back.
And maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just coincidence, but I swear since we've been on this stuff, it's helped a lot, especially with kids. Granted, they're older than they were. You might notice I got claims. I did just this afternoon. Been another one of those days. Kids definitely knew it was a Monday, but you wanna, but I'll still answer any questions you might have when it comes that time.
Yeah, no, alfalfa. Alfalfa.
Oh, no, I'm gonna be devastated.
You gonna be sad?
I'm assuming this is.
Just probably, it's probably just spam mail.
That is-
Yeah.
For other people coming.
Propane bus.
No, it's gonna be you and me. Mr. Nist may be here.
Well, that's
But-
fine, 'cause I'm hoping
I know. So it may just be me. I kind of figured you'd have to leave early. Mrs. DeGraff has parent-teacher conferences tonight for her son. Mr. Niss and you will be going basketball route. Who does that leave? Lisa really wasn't heavily involved in those conversations.
Tyler.
I don't know if he was homesick today.
Tyler.
And I think it may have been him and not kids. So,
Yeah, he was the one that.
Yeah.
According to Zeke, he has, that's what he told us.
a lot of food poisoning going on.
Don't know what it was from, so. That's the main report.
There's just a lot of stomach virus stuff going around. I know, I'm not 100%. Touch your space. Oh, and Jeff's doing book, but he did give me his 2 cents. Well, it's gonna be the same from him.
Is it?
And Jeff, he says, we're gonna do it. We can go after.
Thank you.
And he agrees at this time.
No socks. I
Yeah,
hate
that
their
was- He
websites.
said service was terrible.
And the layout. I mean, I've looked at a variety of them and parents complain they can't find things. It's, no, not socks. They've not really advanced since they
And, you know,
started it.
And you know, really about everything else that's out there is gone. Like Strive does. Oh, I'll wait for the meeting to tell us. Stuff. You know, Strive doesn't, they continue to support the schools they have, but they've gone away from that.
Mhm.
He says if we're gonna do WordPress, we do it in-house because.
That's what I was. Yeah.
Can we just, once Lisa, we get through the bills and stuff, can we move that up so Julie can do a little presentation before we?
Yeah, if, yeah, actually, what I would say is I think if you're gonna rearrange the agenda, you do need a motion. And so I think if you wanted, you could do welcome. And then what I would suggest doing is doing the,
Consent agenda.
I don't even think we could
Go about
welcome
that.
it and go straight in and do that and do Mr. Niss's principal report because he wants to go
Mhm.
to the game too. Back, depending upon how long this takes, I'm gonna try to at least get up for the second half. But if it goes long, don't go fast on account of
Well,
me.
you should have brought some for the next.
I know, I'm thinking it was only Monday.
Before you sit down, Lisa, if we all want to run over and grab a photo now.
Sure.
I know last time we did it right over here. What do you think, Julie, for a good place for board?
Yeah, I say, right up there is usually where I take it on that blank wall.
Might need to ask for that there.
Everybody did their hair and then.
Polish it.
They're a lot bigger. If you need to go in my room, just take it out.
And that wall would be great. I don't want to move your leg.
Oh, yeah. That's a big deal. I tell you, you can move it. But,
Yeah.
Let me grab it. I'll grab mine. Give you a picture. I'm gonna try. He's also taller, so then he's looking like down. Maybe if I was.
Yeah. And then, I'm pretty sure it was right after that. I think it's better.
Did he message him?
That's all right. I'll roll that.
We'll take care of it later.
It'll be fine.
Brian, did you put in the package the foundation report?
Should be, yes.
Okay. I copied these memories. All right. All right, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If there's a motion to declare an open meeting.
I'll make a motion to declare an open meeting.
Second. Motion by Jason, second by Mary. Roll call vote, starting with Bobby.
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Hope? Yes. Mary? Yes. Jason
Yes.
and JW.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Moving on to the welcome. The Open Meeting Act is adhered and posted, and the notice of meeting posted and published as required by law. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Actually, before you do, could
Okay.
we, Mary suggested before you got here, making a motion to move item 8A and also the principal's report to the top of the agenda so that these guys can get going on to the basketball game and not be rushed.
Sure. Is that okay to do that without
I think as long
approving
as,
the agenda first?
without what?
Without approving the
Oh,
agenda first?
that's probably true. Since that's in the consent agenda, we should probably, for sure, right?
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it. Motion by Jason, second by Hope. Any discussion, Jason?
Nope.
Hope? No. Any other discussion on the agenda?
So on the, I think we're doing the whole consent agenda.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to point out a few things. I did make a copy of my, another one of those busy days, and so I finally got to it this afternoon. When I get a chance, I have some time, I'll try to get this to you in advance, just with my chicken scratches on it. The few bigger ones, the Iowa School of the Deaf, we do have a student. This will be the final year of attendance. So that's first semester tuition for Iowa School of the Deaf. That is a big dollar amount. It will be an allowable exception in maintenance of effort in the future, which basically means it'll be that much less that we have to spend. It's an allowable exception to that expense. Maintenance of effort, the abbreviated version of what that is it's, you have to spend as much as you did the prior year for special education. Otherwise, they dock you dollar for dollar in reimbursement. in your special education. It's a federal law, and the state's bound by it. Schools are bound by it. The only thing that's not bound by it is the federal government. And so that will probably have a comparable expense for second semester, and then we get to subtract that from maintenance of effort. Natural gas was really high this month. We tried to, I think we had a lot of really cold days, had to run the boiler a lot. Our gas usage was up, and then of course commodity prices are up. Network computer solution, a while ago, I in one of my reports, maybe before either JW or Bobby were on the board, we talked about how our network wireless access system was going to get upgraded. I think altogether, this was about is in the ballpark of 50,000. So this is an E-rate project, which means of the covered stuff, it's an 80-20 split. Federal government pays for 80% through the part of the federal government that does that is basically to provide connectivity to schools, and we have to pay the other 20%. Hopefully we'll be able to get it set up so that the portion that goes direct, we don't pay them and get reimbursed. It'll just go straight from USAC, the federal organization, to the vendor, and then we pay the rest. And I think you've got a 2 or 4 year cycle to spend that E-rate money, and we've earmarked that for our wireless access system is about 6 years old, and in technology that's a long time. And so this brings us up to, I think, 2 gigs, or will be up to 2 gigs on how much speed we can use. We won't have a log jam anymore, and that's a lot of data. That's really good, even for this day and age. Those were the big ones I just wanted to point out if there were some questions on.
Can we go back to
Mhm.
the Iowa School Board? So if this student, I know that person is a senior in our school, but if they continue there, is that still our cost?
So if I think a situation like this, a student would have probably, and ultimately that's the answer to that is it's an IEP decision.
Okay.
But, and I haven't been involved with those since this decision was made, but in all likelihood, I don't see the student wanting us to hold her diploma a day longer than we have to.
So once this person graduates from our school, then
You can't have secondary education and your diploma at the same time. It's one or the other. So if you want to, like we've had some that continue to
Sure.
receive education to 21, we have their diploma.
got it.
So Mr. Niss and I have talked about it, but the long and short of it is the procedure we want to go through there for graduation. So we've always let them walk because they've earned it is more of a ceremonial thing, but then we hold the diploma until they're done, because Nebraska Constitution does say common education for students age, I think 5 to 21. And so that is, but if they graduate early, then they're done with the public education side of thing. And of course, we did lose an expense from last year when we had the in-house interpreter.
Mhm.
So that's an expense we're not paying now.
Any other questions for Brian?
I have one.
Mhm.
For the rental for Table Rock,
Mhm.
does that cover like how many months? Is that an annual thing, or does that just cover like winter months during basketball?
We have months put into that for summer months too. We try to align it. We've not ever used it, but I think this year we probably will for volleyball at least. So like we've got this year scheduled. Last summer we didn't have to do our gym resurface because it was done as part of the leak repair and the resurface that was paid for through Alley Cap, and so that was done in the spring. This year we will have to get into that annual cycle, and we prefer oil base just because it's just a lot more durable. And once you put a water base down, you have to stay with water base. You can't go back. And so, but without air conditioning and the humidity in the summer, you really have to leave it off for about 3 months. So Matt Schumacher, who does that for us, he usually comes in like that Saturday or Sunday before 4th of July weekend, and we've got him booked again for this year. Kind of a really small operation, but I'm really impressed with this guy. I don't think you can get as much TLC from anyone else that really goes in and does it the old fashioned way. And he seems to know a lot about resin. He talks about how you can avoid the yellow coloration to it by the resin you choose on the lacquer.
So we will be able to use.
Yes, to answer your question, yes. Yeah.
So how many months does the $700 cover?
It's the total contract is 3,500. And so I think we pay it in 7 installments.
For the whole year?
Yeah.
More or less.
I think it's
Yeah.
what we've done in the past.
No, five installments, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, roll call vote. Lisa, yes. Hope,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby. Yes. Motion. So now we will have,
Now I'd like to make the motion to move item 8A and also the principal's report next on the agenda. However you want to do that.
is there a second?
I do second, sorry.
So, any discussion on that? All right, so the motion is to move item 8A and the principal's report. Is that
Yes,
it?
yes.
Okay.
Which is 6B, if you want a number.
To,
Next.
right under the consent agenda item. So roll call vote. Hope,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby. Yes. Lisa, yes. Motion carried 6-0. So we'll go ahead with item 8A and the principal's report. Which one do we want
So
first?
we'll go ahead and start with the website, and I'll give what, would you want to just take? I'll kind of just give you, we'd asked our tech team to be here, which consists of Julie and Jeff, and certainly Laura was Miss Johns, and now Mrs. Laura DeGraff, Mr. Farabee, and I think, did I say you already, Derek, and myself are kind of the core of that group. They're the brains of this operation, especially the teachers that use it on a day-to-day basis. This really came from them. The biggest reservation is, of course, the price tag. Now, Mr. Farabee I'm told maybe has food poisoning, something digestive. Jeff taking book at the game. Mr. Niss is going up to be admin at the game, and Mrs. Pierce is going to be mom at the game. But go ahead, Julian, give your thoughts on it if you'd like.
Well, we've been researching different avenues, vendors that could improve our website or our social media. And even if we go with one, it will even improve our school messaging. And Laura DeGraff has done a great job, and she, prior to coming here, is part of a tech committee, and they even looked at what each one had to offer and even broke it down as to which schools were using it, what was the cost wise, did you get good feedback from the company, and it was pretty comprehensive. And then we ourselves, the group, had a Zoom meeting with Apogee, and they told us what would come from them. Brian did some research and got information from SOX, and even the Paradigm, the interactive one. I think we did our due diligence in looking at what each one would benefit the school the most. I personally think Apogee is the best for your money. It is a good chunk of change. They do a one-time fee where they're going to take our information from our website and they're going to put it in their own, I don't know what we'd say, their own site. They're going to make it their own with information from us. It's smooth. It's seamless. You can put photos on there. Teachers can have their access to it to upload stuff, but then it would be approved by members of either the admin. And therefore, not everybody's just willy-nilly putting it up there. There's a part that it will push out to not only our website, but it'll put it on Facebook, Instagram, called TrillShare. So it's just going to push it out. That's one less step everybody has to do, or 5 less steps that everybody has to do. So if it gets pushed to one, it's going to get pushed to all mediums. It also could take care of our school messaging system, which would be a savings to us as well. So it can do text and call, I believe, as well. Do you remember? Yeah. Yep. And social, and it would go out on social media. It also would give us the ability to have our own app for our school, where they would go, if you download the app, it would be our site only, basically dedicated to our school. We could push that out with parents. That also would have notifications on it if the parents would want to turn those notifications on. So if something happened at school, then if you had your notifications turned on, it would just pop up immediately for you, which I think would be nice to have. So if there's a change to the calendar or anything like that, it can be immediately released to our clientele of our school. And as far as the other ones go, I mean, there are still some good things about it. SOX does do a lot of stuff, but I personally have seen, like JCC's, there's a lot of redundancy, or it's harder to navigate. WordPress is pretty just simple stuff, like what Jeff's done. I mean, that's pretty much WordPress. Was there another one that we looked at? Those were the main ones, but and I do agree that the price tag is quite a bit for Aptigee, but I think what you're going to get customer service wise and just the interaction between our community and the school will be that much easier to do. You're going to get your money's worth.
Do you know of any district in the area that uses this?
Yeah. Fall City Public
Theirs is good.
does use Aptigee, as well as
HTRS.
HTRS, Nebraska City. There are quite a few.
Seneca too.
Yeah. And they will make it customized to us. So, I mean, if you look at their websites, they look pretty seamless, but I mean, if we want something tweaked, we can have it tweaked. They have a running news feed. So like on Facebook, you get all this other stuff. Well, it's just going to be our news feed. Like if we have our app, so it'll look really, really nice.
I won't echo everything she said, but there are a couple of points I'd like to make. One is that I think Mr. Rottinghouse and I are always aware of how we need to make it a priority to constantly improve communication with not only families, students and families, but with the community. This was kind of exciting to look into, and once we found out some of the tools that were available, it was really exciting. Specifically with Aptigee and the what they call TrillShare component of it. That's the communication feature. So right now we use School Messenger, which does cost the district every year, and it's kind of burdensome to use, to be honest. As somebody that uses it, Mr. Rottinghouse won't complain, but I will. It takes a long time. If I'm in the middle of doing a lot of different things and I need to get a quick message out, there's oftentimes like it goes hours before I get it out because it takes so long to do, and then it eventually times out by the time I get to come back to it. So what I like about this is it not only uses our just like School Messenger does now, where we can push out a voice call or an SMS or an email, but we can also do the push notifications to phones that have the app, and we could also do Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all at the same time. So I think when we're talking about communication, like that's a really important component to consider. Another thing is that, we did look at other companies, specifically Aptigee, SOX, and WordPress. And Mrs. DeGraff was able to run through her tech integration group with
Yeah,
the state.
that email.
That survey is, it's in the packet there. And so, I mean, you can see from there, obviously not everyone responded, but of those that did, Aptigee was the most commonly used at this point. I overall have yet to hear really any significant negative feedback about it. Yeah, other than the Bryce.
The two tech people I reached out to early on in the process was because that was my question. Okay, if we're messaging, because one of the Power School, without going into long details, so about 5 years ago, Power School reconfigured their layout and they changed where they keep contact information in. So this is how Jeff explained it to me. If you think about an Excel spreadsheet or a spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet, everything used to be like on one tab in spreadsheet. Now they've taken all the contact information and moved it to another whole tab. Like it's a different sheet entirely in the spreadsheet. So I'm sure it runs in some kind of, because you can export all that data as a CVS and do all that stuff. Whenever that happened, we had a lot of problems with even our big and best vendors syncing, communicating properly with Power School. It took upwards of a year or more. Clever had trouble doing it. Some of the ones that don't go through Clever had trouble doing it. Messenger just really never got all those kinks worked out with communicating with Power School. So I've gone through at some point in that process and went through and manually override all of that contact information, one contact at a time in School Messenger. Problem with that is then when it changes in Power School, it doesn't say you got to go in and manually do it again. I think this company is big enough. They've had plenty of time to work out those communication syncs. I do think it comes down to having the right buttons clicked in Power School so that this all happens. I think that's a one time, especially if those secretaries have to go through and do that one time so that all the right buttons are clicked in that contact thing. Then it'll create just a mental note. Okay, when a new student comes in, I got to make sure this is clicked and that's clicked. So under School Messenger, people are supposed to have to opt in to receive messages unless you go in and override that. So I've manually override it. I think that can be done in Power School and it'll sync with this. So that was the question I had for the tech people more than anything else. Strive, I called them. They don't do this anymore. They've kind of heard they're kind of in limbo too, that half of their ownership kind of withdrew. They've put their focus. So I guess they support the schools that did Strive, but they don't anymore. No one else offers everything in one like Aptitude. At least no one. I was kind of surprised by how much is not out there. I think for me, it's not a big deal because I don't do things on app, but that's what I hear is that's a big deal. People want to just be able to go to the app. Another thing that was big to me, having gone through this process once as a brand new, very green superintendent and getting shot down at my very first board meeting, I've kind of been reluctant to wade into this territory again. Now that Terry's gone, he would be happy if he was here as many times as he complained about our website. But, we got to get buy-in from the people in the school. So there's about a handful of us that post. I take care of the board website, kind of the activities page. I'm kind of in charge of it, but then there's a little bit of assistance through Mr. Farabee, Mr. Niss, and the coaches themselves. April does a big thing with the Google site, but the reality is we've got about 6 or 7 different websites instead of one. One of the big pushes that Aptitude has is you want everything on the same database, even the menu, so that when they click on that menu, it's right there. It's not sending you off to some URL, redirecting you to some URL. That would be a lot of time if we were going to do it in-house. They charge a one-time fee to do all that stuff. Mrs. Velvet, she's okay with the idea of moving away from Tumblr, having everything housed on one website. So whether it's media, social media, and then you can do a post and it'll do a push notification on the app, it'll post it to social media. It'll be the top story. And it used to be like a Twitter newsfeed. Now that'll just be its own kind of Twitter newsfeed or Facebook newsfeed. It'll be the top story in that newsfeed and it just pushes the things down. Our website, if you want to post something like for me anyway, if you want to post a picture, you got to upload it to another database and then put that URL redirect in there. It's just incredibly clunky. for what it's worth, and I think it's worth a lot. Jeff says if we're gonna, don't do socks, he said, because socks is, he said it's customer support, and he said if we're gonna do WordPress, we just do that in-house. It's gonna be what it is. It's gonna be kind of like a kind of a Google site or a Weebly, only it has more options, or a GoDaddy or something like that. It just has more options, but it would still be handled in-house. But his, in terms of just other than the price, overall usability, best would be Apogee in his eyes. Laura did put, like, it's in it, Mrs. DeGraff did put together there's like a little matrix at the very first page of new business. It kind of shows what all the features of the three we've looked at have. And then there's a copy of the email she sent out, some notes that she put together, or that she shared that was sent out, the email, and then some notes she put together, and then proposals. And then finally, just this afternoon, about 2 hours ago, I finally got an estimate. And that's what I handed out. It's a separate sheet of paper from SOX to do the content migration. And they charge $50 an hour for that, I think. And so they gave, so it still would be total would be less than half for Apogee. I have, didn't get a hard yes, but I've got a pretty, reading between the lines, a pretty strong yes, that this would be an acceptable ESSER expense through ESSER 3, just 1 year, just that first year, that 14,000, and then the 7,010, I think, would be an annual expense thereafter. We are currently paying, usually about this time of year is when we get that invoice here in a month or two. We're currently paying $1,250 a year for a school messenger. That's an expense we could drop. So that would be a savings. But this group of people thinks much more strongly about it than me. And I wish Mrs. DeGraff was here, because I was going to say like really good things about her, but she's been an amazing contribution in general, but as it pertains specifically to this, we're doing things that we never did before, and people are noticing it. I think this would only help improve that.
In her
Mhm.
in her pros and cons list,
Mhm.
it talks a couple different times about an upgrade. So the system that we would get, is that the upgraded version 2? Because they're talking about like the CMS, not editing, not mineral break. And one of them stated in there that there was, the first one said something about there was an upgrade.
Well, the email was about a year ago, a little over a year ago on the feedback. So
And then
I would assume that
halfway down it says version 2 is better. So I just wondered if
We would have the newer version.
the newer version.
Yes.
Thank you.
And ours would, like on one of them, what said that each building had its own website. I don't believe that that's the way we would have ours set up. It would just be one school.
Right.
So you just be coming to Pawnee City School, not Pawnee High School, Pawnee Elementary
Will
School.
we keep our same URL, or will we have a new URL?
That I don't know.
I think even Jeff can do that, is have it automatically redirect.
Yeah, I
If
think,
it does,
I think it's possible that we could keep our own URL.
well, since he owns it, I would think it
Yeah.
would help.
So is Jeff not the one that currently does our website stuff, or he does?
He does. I mean, our current expense is just he built this in like 2002 as part of his master's program.
So it's a website, and then it has different websites embedded in it. So everything that Brian does, he does on Weebly. And so Jeff connected that. What Mrs. Alba does is continue the Tumblr, which is a whole nother app that's easy for the kids to use to upload pictures and stuff. And then that's embedded in that media part. And then we have our Google Calendar and things. So like Brian was talking about, we have a lot of different websites and pieces that Jeff has pasted into our website to give it the functionality and things.
It's more like a landing place is what it is. It's not really, as much of a functioning website as other places that you go. It's a landing place where you go and then it's going to redirect you somewhere else. Whereas this would not. You would stay within that website. Everything would be contained within it. You would not be redirected to other places.
I have one more question. So you guys had talked about a new program that we were using for the teachers and all the features that it had. I don't remember what the program was.
Real share.
No, that we
Prior.
went to in a prior.
Is that Lexia? Are you talking like
And
for?
I was just curious if that program had any capabilities to send out messages and stuff.
Is there a step up or some stuff?
I was gonna say, I can't think of what the name of it is. We've talked about
Is
it.
it something with the data collection?
EduClimber?
EduClimber.
So
I was
does
like,
that
really?
have any features that we could use?
No.
EduClimber
others?
is all private information. So that's for us to,
It's to gather,
Triangulate.
it's to collect data on students so we can track them and
So
then.
none of our current, like Blackboard or any of those, we could
No.
use any features from any of those.
yeah, Blackboard is a learning platform and we don't use it anymore. We use Canvas. Actually, it's Blackboard. We became the last school that ESUCC was hosting, and then we became no longer the last school on their server in Kearney. That was or Grand Island. It's one of the two. So that server has been shut down and probably turned offline and scrapped. We do Canvas is our, and we have 3 teachers that use that currently. And then of course, Google Classroom, but that's a content delivery. That's a curriculum delivery. It's not a social media. And same way with EduClimber, everything that's on EduClimber would be confidential information that we couldn't really do anyway. And we still kind of only scratched the surface on that. I mean, like in the elementary, doing all of our discipline documentation on there. Like for me, the next big step is to do purchase requisition on that, because it does have something we just can't do in Google Docs is somebody sends it in and then I can be assigned to check off, or Mr. Ness for activities can be assigned to check off on the approval, and then it would go to staff or whomever to make the purchase. So it's gonna have some of those features.
So currently, do we have then just certain people that are in charge of like Instagram, certain people that are in charge of?
Yes,
Because
correct.
my concern is it's great we can use ESSER funds for the first year,
Mhm.
but that is a pretty hefty amount every year from here on out.
5760.
So how much time does Jeff have to spend on the website? How much time does Laura?
Very
spend?
little, because it rarely gets changed. I mean, the big thing Jeff does is once in a while he'll throw something up there, but I do the bulk of that. And I'm kind of the OCD one that every font has to be the same. And if it doesn't, it drives me crazy. But then, I think the only people that can even log in right now is because Mary used to be able to, and no one's really replaced Mary in that aspect. So it's just Jeff really that can even post. And all he really does is those things on the side. He has to manually go in and like upcoming events.
So is there any other platform we could go with for that would be cheaper in the long run?
WordPress would be the route to go. It'd be like $1,000 a year for WordPress, or not even probably.
So I guess if we're considering spending this, is there any time that we're saving staff that could be utilized better to justify it?
With one feature that's nice is like, so students can go in and post something and then it has an upline process and then it gets reassigned to a staff member, right? Am I saying this correctly? And then it gets reassigned to a staff member and that goes upline. And then whoever has the authority to put it live.
So how many of our like elementary teachers and stuff, do you still have your own Facebook page, or nobody has that anymore? I mean, some did.
I have a preschool Facebook.
So would you be willing to use this then so that it gets pushed out and things like?
The
What about
teachers,
teachers'
the
staff?
teachers could essentially make their own posts, because right now what they're doing is they're sending stuff either to myself or to Laura, because we've kind of broke it down where she's in charge of the high school, I'm in charge of elementary. So the teachers are sending us stuff and then we are posting it up there. Well, this would actually stop that from happening, and we could get more things up because they can do their own post and then somebody just approves it and then boom, it's done. We're not having to go through a middleman or, and they might forget about it, or it's old news where it's going to be more instantaneous for our clientele to be able to see that. And again, if we want the communication out there, let's make our own story. Let's show people that we're doing. That's what we're trying to do right now. But this is gonna make it more efficient by stopping through. They can put pictures on there. They can put their narrative on there, and they can put it out. And it just saves a middleman. Because I mean, I'm not opposed to doing it. I'm doing it right now, but it just saves a middle person, and they could be more authentic if it's coming from them. And then we just have to say, yep, it's approved. So you're making sure that they're not posting something that we don't want to put out there.
And then it would it goes effectively with one click, goes 6 places.
Yes, essentially it will just go boom. It's everywhere. Whereas right now, like Laura, she's using Hootsuite and that post to multiple places. So it's Instagram, Facebook, just the 2. So she's doing that. Well, like for me, I'm not a big Instagram person. So like if I'm posting stuff, it just goes to Facebook. And Hootsuite does have a fee too. So you're going to get more bang for your buck. You're going to get your word out there farther with Aptigee.
Especially with having your own app and things that they can have.
Absolutely.
Right down.
Yeah.
Didn't they say it communicates with Google Calendar too?
Yes.
So
And our school that we use for activity scheduling contracts now.
it syncs with it. So
And it's instantaneous changes, and that because that was one thing that Brian, I remember you were like, yeah, that would be great, because sometimes we get it changed in one place and then it doesn't get changed in another, and then we have confusion with people. So this would change every place instantaneously.
So what about like Power School, and if you have the app, could a parent go in, this is my kid, I'm gonna check their grades really quick? Like, it doesn't have any of those features where,
From what I know now, it would not replace the Power School app. So if parents want Power School information, they'd still have to use Power School. There wasn't another one that offered any feature like that either. Was there something there? I feel like there was a second part to your question. I had my mind racing in details that I wanted to share a minute ago.
no, I was just
Okay.
thinking, he's in kindergarten, so there's really not a whole lot for me to check in on. But I know as she gets older, would that all be part of one-stop shop,
Right.
instead of having the Power School app?
By that time, probably.
There may be.
But
Yeah.
that's a few years down the road, because now even the elementary use, oh gosh, to communicate with parents to send them.
Class Dojo.
Yes,
is that it?
yes. So
we
that's
have
a
a
whole,
couple of features that do class
yeah.
code.
So that's a
Yeah.
whole nother app that
Mm.
parents would.
Or Google Classroom.
or Google Classroom.
You brought up Power School. That just reminded me of the syncing issues we've had. Just an example, the last time I used School Messenger to send out a message was to a smaller group. It was to parents of 7th, 8th, and 9th graders about the DC trip meeting. And I don't have an exact count, but somewhere between 6 and 10 families reported to me that they didn't get the information, didn't know that we were having a parent meeting. And it takes long enough to craft the message on that anyway. I definitely don't have time every time I'm going to send a message to go back and look at the reports to see which one was delivered and which one was not. Now it can be helpful after the fact. So if they report it to me, then I can collect that and I can give it to Brian, and Brian can go in and manually update it. Those are things that we don't think we would have to worry about with this updated system based on feedback from other schools.
But it is nice that more than one person now, meaning me, knows how to use School Messenger. Now we've got 3 that can do it.
Yeah.
Currently.
And
It's clunky.
there are a lot of, I think, things to consider with such a visible project for your school. And those functional pieces are much more important. But I also think that the impression that people get when they go to our website about things that are happening at our school is really important. And if you go to Battle Creek's website or Nebraska City or Falls City and you look at their website now through Aptigee, it looks like a consistent, reliable organization. So I'm not saying that should be a top tier factor, but I think it should be considered at least.
Any more questions for Julie? Because I feel like we really should cut her loose.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
work on
Julie.
this.
Yes.
Other than school messenger, is there any other costs that we're putting out right now?
Saving. I suspect we'll probably keep the domain. Well, it depends. If we're able to just keep the same domain, that's a question that never has come up in this whole process. If we can keep the same domain and just reassign it. But aside from that, we'll probably pay the $100 or so to keep that live. Just so it can have like something, this is the old, he'll zero everything out. It'll just have one landing. That's what Lewiston did. I know when they went away from it, it just says, click on this link. If it doesn't automatically redirect, because Jeff used to do Lewiston's website too. It doesn't automatically redirect when you click on it. It'll just be something, okay, click on this link to go to the new website. If one on their search browser, Google or Bing or whatever brings up the old website. And it will see a lot of stuff now too is something I just thought of as we're talking is like word search. If you do a word search in a search engine, it's going to bring you to one website and it would all be there. Or if you do a word search within a website, since it's all housed within that domain, it would all be there.
One other cost to consider, Julie mentioned Hootsuite, which is a platform that Laura's been using. She's been using the trial, which we won't have access to for much longer. That's what allows her to post to multiple platforms at once. The trial doesn't allow her to post to Instagram, I believe it is. So she posts to Facebook and Twitter through Hootsuite and then posts to Instagram separately, which is burdensome on her time. Also, whenever we want something shared out to multiple places, any of us, Julie, Brian, me, Lisa, Laura in the high school, any of us send it to Laura, Miss DeGraff. And so I don't think that that's sustainable to do with her time. I don't think she can be solely responsible for posting all of our social media. And so the cost for that would be, depending on which plan we went with, between $250 and $740 annually. Yeah.
But aside from that, I can't think of any other savings. It would be like Hope pointed out, more money.
I'd like to correct that too. I just went on their site to check. $249 per month is what an organization our size the subscription would be.
To get the actual full.
For Hootsuite, yeah, for us to use the full. There would be a option to do a $99 per month subscription, but I don't really see the point in doing that because it limits us to one user then, so we'd be funneling everything through her anyway.
So I am on the Fall City website quite a bit, and it just looks really professional and nothing. Jeff's done a great job with ours, but there's like everything evolves and there's an expectation, and it is sort of looking in your front window. If you're a storefront, that's your window to the world. So,
And I would not recommend Fox at all. Sterling has Fox. There's other schools that run it all at the same sheet. They're hard to navigate through. You can't find anything.
you just get frustrated.
Yeah. I hate how you have to, once you find things, even to email a teacher is that little generic, leave your name and message. You can't really link to them and things. I don't like it.
Well, your teacher's time and your administration's time has got to be worth something. Because if they're more involved trying to keep things updated on, all your social media stuff, and they aren't teaching your kids. I mean,
But it's
But is that
taxing the
something-
people.
Is that something though that Jeff could be trained to do? Since he's our
Jeff
technology
Jeff
guy?
is fully capable of doing
Mhm.
stuff like that.
I mean,
Like rather than having Laura do it, is there, that's something that we could have Jeff do instead?
Are you referring to the social media
Mm-hmm,
information specifically?
mm-hmm.
I'd say that it's possible. One thing that makes a difference having a teacher specifically doing it is that the teachers are regularly present, at events or in classrooms. Laura's, as a teacher, is very familiar with how the classroom operates. So a teacher doesn't have to send her a very detailed description. They can just send her a picture and she can explain from a teacher's perspective. I would say Jeff has the technical ability for sure. But I don't know if it's feasible for him to be present at all the different, that's what makes the team approach right now function, because either Brian or I is at every event. And then with Anne being there, Laura Blosser, Julie being there, Lisa being there, Laura being there. But right now we're all of us attempting to try to share that information is still getting funneled through that one person, like I said. So yeah, I think Jeff could play a part in it, although Laura has done a fantastic job. She specifically brings
You're putting
some
the
good
burden
qualities
back
to that.
onto one or two people. Everyone should be responsible for sharing what's going on in their classroom.
And
It's not going to take as much time then if they can go directly, take a picture, the kids can help write a caption and get it up there. Otherwise, you are sending it to someone else, putting the picture up separately, putting the text up separately. It's time consuming.
What I like about this is it wasn't me. This was the teachers coming to me saying, this is what we need.
So this is what they want to use.
This was not spearheaded by me. It's like they came to me and said, Brian, this is going to make us market our school, brand our school a lot better. I guess I'll be honest, I got burnt last time and I've been very gun shy to circle back to this again. That was my very first board meeting.
I definitely think it's an impressive thing. I just feel like that $7,000 every year is that's awful steep. And I just feel like there is a better way that we could utilize that money.
Well, if we save the $1,250, so it's down to 57.
And if we went with the 250 version of Hootsuite, that's $3,000 a year.
Plus the $1,250 per message. So there's 42. You're getting.
Well, the 1,250 and the 249 was already together when Lisa said that.
No, 1250 was school
The
messenger.
1250 is just
It's
messenger.
250 per
And then
month,
it's
right? Did I
250
hear
per
that
month,
right?
yeah.
So that's 3,000.
3,000.
And then 1,250 for
So that's 40.
messenger or whatever.
Mhm.
42.
It's the world we live in as far as immediate coverage, immediate contact, right or wrong. That's as people come up through, they want to know, and when you're at your office or out and about, if you can get a text message, the kids are getting out early or whatever. I know we do that, but it sounds like it's cumbersome. And I would like to utilize things that make us be able to have more time with students, more time with administration issues that are immediate, and just be more consistent, I think, in our messaging. So it is a big chunk. We don't have a motion on the floor. So if we want to make a motion and then have more discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to table it for a little while so that we can just, I feel like that's a lot to absorb
I will say that
for a big amount.
the Apogee proposal does sunset at the end of February. That was a discounted rate, believe it or not, for the one time.
For the 14.
So what will that go on to then?
I think it's a 25% discount. So I think it was in their proposal. You would, yeah. Of course, they're doing that because they want the decision made right now.
They know the pressure of
Yeah.
school board.
Well, and also they want more time because they know
To
everyone
build it,
hit
yeah.
the slams them in May, at the same. So they want to buy time for themselves, and they're willing to give us a discount because, they want to keep dependable people on the clock. But, when they really need them is So we might get a better product since we give them a little more time too, or less prone to error.
But the initial cost, no matter if it's the 1,400 or the 1,750 with the discount, without the discount.
It's the one time, I mean, it's
That's
just on the
what
front end.
we can,
And the ESSER, yeah.
ESSER money, so. Do you want to spend 3,000 somewhere else with that ESSER money?
We don't have a second to hope
Oh, second, sorry.
to table it. You can second it, Mary, and we can
Yeah.
discuss and vote. Okay, so motion by Hope, second by Mary to table it. Is there any discussion? Hope?
I think most of my stuff that I asked has already been answered.
Mary?
And I think there's definitely pros and cons of tabling it, you know, to collect, to kind of read through it a little bit more. And, you know, I know Julie and Derek were kind of rushed tonight. I know they've seen a demonstration, they've seen some pages, that type of thing. But, you know, if we table it, there's that $3,000 now that we're aren't using for something else. If that's what we do.
Any other discussion?
Guess could we table it and then? I mean, so we don't miss out on that 25%. I don't know. Just sometimes we make a decision before the end of the month. I know it's only 2 weeks away, but.
Well, I will say this, I knew that there was gonna be a lot of questions with this, and we've discussed this probably, I don't know, half a dozen times as a team. There's not anything new I don't anticipate we're gonna bring.
How many teachers are on board on this? Are all the teachers on board on this, or is this?
We haven't taken it to the whole staff. No,
Okay.
that's a good question. I mean, teachers that have been involved in the discussion. 8, 9 directly. I'm sure there's more that have given feedback that I'm not aware of, but.
Well,
just to give
we
you an
talked
idea.
to the ones we knew needed to, you know, it was important to get buy-in,
Yeah,
because we knew that'd be a question too. I mean, for the most part, I think the other teachers are just going to be, okay, tell us what to do and we'll do it, sort of thing.
That might make a difference too. If you have, you know, half your staff is like, oh yeah, let's do this, I'm gonna participate, but the other half says, not interested, then you still have the same, essentially the same amount of staff people doing the work, doing the legwork. And you're really not gaining a whole lot as far as getting
All the content. Angela, can I put you on the spot? Were you part of the team, the discussion team?
No, but
But would you use it? Tell me what you,
I mean, like now when I post or when I send pictures, I have to download them from my phone and like change the format. And then I have to send it off. And so that's.
and you send it
my
to
time that I
Laura to put up, is that,
put up.
or to
So
Ann?
If I were just to like, be able to make a post, boom, I wouldn't have to download it from my phone, to my computer. This is a lot of work.
Mhm.
To put information out. And this is the image of our school. And when I was looking at jobs, I looked at every single website of the schools that I was applying. And
Yeah.
you have nice, sleek websites, you're going to attract
And families.
families.
We've had families say that they have come because, especially the Tumblr posts, that's what they liked. Because that was student driven and stuff.
And
Deidre, I know you're a whole different thing. You can.
Oh, yeah. I can't post
No.
anything, just because special ed.
Yeah,
Private.
absolutely.
So I post nothing. I wish I could do some cool things in my classroom. I would have a lot of.
Absolutely.
I do too. I mean, I've given Julie pictures and stories and she's put them on.
It's kind of a nice thing. So I have a question. May I ask a question
Yes.
about it? I've had families who don't do social media at all. If I was to post something on that platform, would it also be able to go just to a text or a cell phone or a link to the face or to the website that they could get that information on also? Because I post things on Facebook, but I have a couple of families who do not do Facebook. Then I have to text them the information separately. And is there a way that that works with posting information? People don't use social media.
The one caveat to this is I don't know how the permissions are set up within the Aptigee structure for everyone at school. Like if we're going to give teachers all access to posting, or if that's something else that's just administrative. But yes, the short answer is that system through someone posting would have the ability, if like, let's say you wanted to use everyone downloaded the app, you could have it send push notifications, or we could have it send a text or a voice call or an email like that too, without having to like go into PowerSchool, create the group, download the CSV file, then upload that into your Gmail, right? That whole process, right? So yes, but the caveat is I don't know how the permissions work yet, unless anybody knows
So
more.
your
Yeah.
families that don't use Facebook and other social media, would they put an app on their phone that was just our Pawnee City school app? Because that's essentially what this is.
I wouldn't see why not. I mean, most people have smartphones and the ability, and they put other apps, they have games on it, so why would you,
Yeah.
right?
But they just don't like the
Yeah,
social media
they
stuff.
just have social media.
Mhm.
Yeah. Would that go out, if I can ask, would it go out to all parents that you need, or just that group?
Within the system, you can set up different groups. So like I could set up one for, like right now is basketball season. So I could set up a girls basketball and boys basketball group, or I could set up a speech group or one act group or FFA group or parents of a certain grade level group or an all boy group or an all girl, whatever it is, you decide the metric, but you could do that.
Do something like that, like when there's a message system, if it's just for preschool, it's really hard to have them send a message to stuff preschoolers. And I can do that myself and give them information about something we're doing. And that's a plus as well.
But will they be able to do that, or is that still gonna be administered by just one person?
You mean like, will the teachers be able to post?
Well,
Or not
to
just
send
post,
out a
but send out
message.
information that way?
Yeah.
That's a really good question that I wish I knew the answer to. I can look in the information really quick and see if I can come up with it. That would be through the ThrillShare component of Aptigee. And I don't know how the permissions are set. So like if every staff would, I mean, ultimately, I would think that could be an administrative decision that we make. But I mean, right now, currently, like with School Messenger, for example, not everyone has access to that. So that would be a change from what we currently do as well.
Could it also save on paper? I mean, especially with elementary kids, there's a lot of notes that get sent home. So could you save on sending those notes home? Make your group for grades. This text goes out to these kids about whatever.
Field
pajama
trips.
day,
Yeah.
Field trip, whatever.
I think with your lower element, it kind of depends on the teacher. There's some teachers that there's one or two that come to mind that three maybe, that probably are still going to want to do things good old fashioned paper.
Well, and I'm afraid you're gonna have those few people that don't want to download an app.
Yeah.
But I think you're still gonna have some people that's just not, they're not gonna do it.
Right.
Or they're not gonna have,
That too.
don't have a
Right.
smartphone because they don't have the availability and affordability of it. So I think that we're never gonna eliminate that completely.
You're probably at least 10 to 20 years away from, or like everyone will be truly wired.
Right.
I mean, really.
And I'm guilty. I think I would still rather send home something tangible give this to your parents, so I know I did my part instead of.
Well, and it's,
Yeah.
it's kind of that lower elementary thing. They're still very concrete. You know, the paper means more to some idea, you know, that to them, they can't conceptualize. Probably I'd say through second grade. Third grade is where they really, and I think, turn the corner and understand. But, and since those are the kind of kids that the teachers are working with, they tend to think that way too.
This was one thought, and it's kind of seemingly random at this point, but as I was looking to answer your question, hope I came across some other information too. And I can't believe I forgot about these, but one of the other things that I thought this was, that made this appealing was how some of the other schools were using it. And so some schools are using DrillShare for, communication like emergencies, but they also use it for things like daily announcements, a way to push that out to everybody. Also like the ineligibility list, to way to push that out to parents in a more timely manner. So there are some other functions within the school that it could also help serve.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we are voting to
Can we make
table.
2 motions?
Well,
we can,
I was gonna say, can we counter our motion?
you can amend it.
You can amend it.
That's what
or we can vote this one down and put a new one on.
either way works.
I think it'd be cleaner to.
Somebody have an amendment?
I'll amend my own motion.
It's okay. And how would you like that
I hate
stated?
having to make motions before we can
I know.
discuss.
But I know
I know what legal stuff, but
it's weird, but it's.
yeah. Um. I guess. Can I just amend it to approve the proposal?
Okay, motion by Hope to amend her motion to approve the proposal.
I'll second.
Second by- Okay, any other discussion?
No.
GW?
No.
Right.
I think it's just for clarification. Just say that we're voting on as amended, if that's how you want to do it.
Okay,
There's 2 ways I think you can do it. Since Hope made the motion, and I didn't say anything last time this happened, but just in case there was ever a contentious situation where, just to clarify, we're voting on the amended motion.
voting on the amended motion.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions, though, on what we're voting on? Okay, so we're voting on the amended motion to approve the Apogee purchase. Is that okay, Brian, if I state what it is? Okay, so $14,000, and now I'm not gonna have those numbers.
1410.
1410 for
Year.
year 1, and then $7,010 annually after that.
I really don't think we need to make the annual motion.
Not yet,
Because
because that'll be,
It also went by student.
it does, but
I was gonna say
that's based on
somewhere I read
that's
that.
based on that,
we'll just do that next year.
right, it'll just go on claims. And so if we have an issue with it, you would just pull it off claims and discuss it.
We don't have to renew it every
Yeah.
year. Okay, makes sense. So we understand the amended motion. Mary, you're up.
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Hope.
Yes.
Your motion carried. Oh, thank you for all your work on that and your presentation. Derek, Mr. Ness, do you want to give your report?
Yes, I'll keep it as brief as possible because I narrated it pretty thoroughly in there, just in case I wasn't able to be here. But since I'm here at this point, so really quickly, Mr. Rottinghouse, I know will cover the curriculum work that we've been doing, so I'll leave that to him. I just wanted to point out engaging educators because that was a day that we took off of school to take teachers to engage in professional growth. And there was a lot of beneficial stuff that came from that day that I've heard from quite a few staff members. So wanted to point that out. Also the DC trip, just to keep that short. The process has been a little rocky as our first time. But now that we've kind of gone through the enrollment process, I think Mr. Cook, Mrs. Blecka, and I have a much better understanding of what the company will do and what the school should do. And I think next time, honestly, I don't think we necessarily need to lean on the company for any of this kind of front end stuff, the legwork. We've been really successful so far. Like we told you guys in a previous meeting in the foundation, as well, we wanted to give the opportunity to every student, and because of the foundation support, that's been a possibility. We're still not at every student. Like we said, many schools get about 30%. We were hoping for 100, knowing that was a high goal, right? But right now we're around 2/3, and so that's pretty cool. We have 60 travelers right now, and that includes about 19 adults that wanted family members that wanted to travel with. So pretty cool to see everybody come together around that. Activities, just basketball, just general details about what's going on now. We're starting sub districts tonight, obviously with girls, and then boys have one final home game and then subs for them. Youth volleyball sign up. Last year, I talked to Lisa a little bit, and then later on in the year, Bobby as well, about an idea that had sprung from a conversation I had with Nebraska City administrators about vertical integration within sports, and an idea that they'd done with their varsity coaches, essentially training the junior high and youth coaches to model the same systems that are in place at the varsity level to provide consistency for the kids as they progress through the programs. Bobby had an idea about spring camps for the youth that could also integrate the junior high and high school kids. So we kind of talked about it and merged those two thoughts, and have also met with Coach Curlin, Lisa and Jordan, and the other youth coaches as well now. And they kind of all came up with an idea about spring clinics where they're going to do 5 of them leading into a summer camp, a 3-day summer camp. So we had sign up night at the ball game the other night, and there were 20, I don't know, mid-20s, 23, 25, somewhere in there. Does that sound right? Yeah. Kids that signed up. So I think it's a great idea. I applaud their work they're doing. It's not always smooth when you're trying to iron out the details between multiple programs. And I've just really been happy that we've had people in place wanting to work together for a goal like that. A couple of things coming up. First, Lego League, the state contest is Saturday. Also, the junior high is going to Urban Air with Mrs. Myers on Saturday. Then speech, we're hosting our speech contest on Saturday. So also, in addition to that, state wrestling is Saturday, which Pawnee had one wrestler qualify. Andy won the C1 district. So it's a class C district, but we're in district 1. There's 4 districts in the state, and Andy won one of the 4. So he's doing great. And so now he's got 16 wrestlers in his 195-pound bracket, which is a tough one. And he'll start on Thursday. First round and second round are on Thursday. Then I believe third round's on Friday, and then finals or consolation matches are on Saturday. So that's this coming week. They're all sold out. Like, you can't get a ticket for Friday or Saturday if you wanted to. So just try to stream it, but it'd be great to watch him there. Just one other point, junior high girls had a game today against Diller Odell, and they won again. So that puts them at 6-1. And it's really fun to watch that group. They have their one loss, which was last weekend at the Fall City tournament. They lost to Sacred Heart. And so this really competitive group of junior high girls we have is looking forward to playing Sacred Heart at home again, I think next week. So it's pretty fun to watch them. Just a few other things. We just recently upgraded our PBIS non-tangible menu. So when we look for rewards, we don't want them all to be tangible things. You know, some ideas of things in the past have been like eating toaster strudels with Mr. Bloss in the morning before school, right? So we added a few things to that. One of them is the PBIS corner. It's essentially a really light blue throne chair in the corner, but Mrs. Bloss and Mrs. Gira have worked on, and it's pretty cool. And anyway, it's another option for kids to spend their PBIS rewards. So this one would be a break in the PBIS corner. So just something I wanted to add. If you're in the school, you can kind of peek down towards Mrs. Bloss's room and see it down there. Parent-teacher conferences this week. And then lastly here, I won't go into all the detail because you guys can read through that, but press box update. So all the windows are in, and I checked in with Scott again today to see what his plans are. He's reported that he hadn't been able to get there this last week, but plans to finish all of his work by the end of next week. So that would just leave the final electrical and HVAC work by Dave. But once Scott is done, the building is very usable. So the one other option to bring up at this point, I had mentioned the idea quite a while ago of a lit sign on the press box. I believe anytime we can take a chance to try to show the pride we have in our school and make something just a little bit better, I think we should take it. And this is one of those opportunities. However, this is not functional, right? It doesn't serve a specific purpose for the press box. None of us think that it would be a good use for school funds. So I kind of just had it on the back burner, and but then I've since had a couple of people come to me, and this happens a lot, where people will come and say, hey, if you ever need help with, say, the trip to state football, or if you ever have a project like this, let me know. And so I've had a couple of people approach me about any projects of this nature. And so right now I'm getting an updated estimate from a company that we worked with for banners and stuff that have done a really good job. They also do lit signs like this. I'm getting an estimate for that. Based on information I found from other companies, I believe a sign would cost between $6,000 and $8,000. And if that's the case, then we've got about 2/3 of it at least pledged for at this point from donated funds. So you can see on that last page there, just kind of a rough rendering of what it would look like. That's really basic. Then there's two options there, basically one with our Indian logo and one without. So the first one is obviously cheaper without the added signage on it, but nothing that needs a decision right now. But something I'll run by when I get more details. I'll run by Mr. Rottinghouse, and I assume the Buildings and Grounds Committee. That appropriate path. Yeah. So, but I just wanted to bring that up to the board, at least at this point. So, any questions for me? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go at least try to get there for the second half.
Thanks for sticking around.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we not have the government stock?
No, I was telling them before you showed up. So of course, Mr. Cluck's at basketball tonight, but we knew that. And he was going to have 4 students come in. Well, 1 or 2 of them is sick. And then Andy's with wrestling now is wasn't going to be, we didn't know what time this was going to be. And so the other student, I won't say who, didn't feel comfortable doing the presentation entirely by himself. So I think they're going to try to do it later in the school year, but as of this morning, things kind of just didn't line up for today. So you can just skip over that.
We'll look forward to that later on. All right, so then we move to policy committee.
We've got this on the agenda, so I don't think any of the committees we really need. I just list them because that kind of talks about things that we've talked about.
Right.
All right, discussed.
Okay. Anything with buildings and grounds, or just?
That would be the bids. Yeah,
okay.
And we'll discuss that in agenda as well.
All right, so then Mrs. Blecka with the counselor's report.
So I can just start with the college visits that we have had so far. On February 7th, we visited Concordia. I took a group of sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and I just put a little bit of their feedback there. Again, I have them scan a QR code, takes them to a Google form where I get their feedback. Students are always really impressed with how Concordia takes the time to talk with them, to visit with them. We have faculty panels, we have student panels. They do a really good job of just trying to get to know the students. The kids liked how the faculty and staff would get really close to them, the small class sizes, and the variety of majors that they had. I didn't know that they had all that they had. And then on February 8th, I took a group of 8th graders to SEC Lincoln. 8th graders had the choice of either Lincoln or Milford. I kind of explained to them, these are the general programs at Lincoln and these are the general programs at Milford. Decide which one do you think kind of fits you. SEC Lincoln visit went really, really well. I'm glad that I ended up taking the 8th graders. My goals were essentially to plant the higher education seed early, expose students to programs, and just help them try to understand like their choices that they make now really do impact their future. It was really neat to hear their interest. I had one student who was really interested in going into business. And then he heard the design and drafting instructors talk. He's like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Maybe I'd like to do something like that. So I'm glad that we went. And the other group will go to Milford in March. Coming up on Thursday is SEC Discovery Days in Beatrice, and I have a couple going with me there. Again, freshmen had the choice of Beatrice, Lincoln, or Milford. I know it's an SEC event, but my goal for them is to discover something that you love and pursue your passion. For Joel Coles, I meet with elementary and middle school and high school groups once a week. The elementary group, we just got done teaching our lessons with kindergarten, first and second graders. They taught their lessons about respect, and we kind of just went around in a cycle. So fifth graders went to kindergarten, and then the next week they went to first grade. The next week they went to second grade. And they are teaching about a growth mindset next. And so we'll start that on Wednesday. It's fun to listen to them because they're discovering that what they teach in kindergarten isn't quite the same of what we should teach in second grade. So we're learning and growing, and I'm kind of being the guide on the side, and they're doing a lot of the teaching and instruction. And on Thursday, I won't be there because of the Discovery Day. So I have two of my high school leadership kids helping my fifth grade girl group present to kindergarten. So I'm just trying to maybe put the ownership on them, the accountability on them, so they can just have it be kind of full circle. Middle school, they are teaching lessons to third, fourth, and fifth graders. We meet on Wednesday the 15th, where they're going to share our lesson plans out. I kind of make sure that everything is how it should be. And I know that the sixth graders, they are already planned. They have emailed me with what their plans of what they're going to do. High school group, they are continuing with their PC1 campaign. They're using the poster printing equipment just to make posters promoting their vision and mission. We are going to be meeting February 16th before we leave for Beatrice. Connecting the dots, this has been rescheduled. We were originally supposed to go in December, but I'm taking all sophomores. So it is just a career simulation to help them kind of put the puzzle pieces together of if I want to do XYZ as a career, I need to take these steps to help me achieve that goal. There's a lot of breakout sessions, educational reps, resume building, the soft skills. So I think we're going to hit on lots of things tomorrow. And Mary's going to be going with me, which we're excited for that. Something to put on your calendars is the SEC's CENCAP dual credit application and registration night. That's going to be March 27th. I have college access grant funds to have a meal for sophomore and sophomore parents who RSVP. I'm just going to go over SEC classes, both CENCAP, dual credit advantage, the differences between those two. We're going to talk about the requirements on the SEC side, requirements on our side, articulation, the scholarships that they can have, and then I'm going to work with the kids on their applications. Even if they are unsure, I always like to encourage kids to apply. I would rather have them have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So want to mark that on your calendars. Love to have you guys come and check it out.
Okay, any questions? Or Mrs. Blecka?
I just have one comment as a parent. It's really nice for those kids to get out and see the schools. It's nice, I know Lisa's been through this a lot of times already, but, getting them out and getting that exposure to a lot of different types of campuses, and then come home and say how much that first year tuition is.
I know in March, we're going to Highland Baileyville. They have a career day where they have a bunch of employers. Or like, if you go in this program, we have jobs waiting for you. So they're really trying to connect with program, job. And then I think we have Wayne State and then Midland on the list, which I'm lucky to take the kids to a variety of places with those college access grant funds. So.
Thank you. Okay, superintendent's report.
Okay, so enrollment is, I think we lost one or two, gained one or two. I think we lost two, gained three type situations from last month. So enrollment's still hanging around that 260 range. The Math Acceleration Project, we've been talking about that. I guess I haven't been using that. That's the title that Department of Ed uses. So I'm gonna, now that I've got that terminology down in my brain a little better. It was the instruction partner math, I think, is maybe how I talked about it in the past. We met again, and they came and was on site. And they've been making a lot of exceptions for us because I keep asking and they do it. So typically they would have wanted all the teachers together. That's not very realistic. So I said, hey, will you do one half of the day and half the other instead of doing them all for just a half a day? And they were flexible with us and did it right over here in Mrs. Pierce's room. I just think it's been a great process for me as an administrator. I've never really done anything like this before. So kudos to Mrs. Pierce for kind of saying this is something we need to do. I never would have guessed math could actually be interesting. So that's kind of neat too. I more from the process standpoint for me, but still it's kind of neat and to have that support as an administrator. Big. I think we've got great teachers in this school, and I don't always feel, and I know our demographics aren't the best, but I don't always feel like what our AQuest scores and our test scores are necessarily a reflection of what's taking place. And I think maybe this has been the missing piece of the puzzle, is giving the teachers the support that they need. Is when I get done with this, I'm going to kind of carry that into the next thing we'll talk about when we talk about next year's calendar. But yeah, instruction, they actually had two other people here on site. It was an opportunity for the teachers to work together, which is something they rarely get to do, is just sit down and have a really focused, guided discussion where they're talking about curriculum and they're getting to talk both with experts in the field and also with their colleagues about what they're doing. And that's hard because we don't have a common planning time. It's not realistic in a school our size to do that sort of thing. So they get to sit down and have those opportunities. It's good for me as an administrator. In the 11 years I've been an administrator, I don't ever feel like near to this extent I've ever had the support, the opportunity to really give the type of support that I have now. So as we start looking at next year's calendar, one thing I want to put forward, I've kind of put it maybe in my reports a little bit, plant the seed, is building this sort of thing into the calendar a little better. And so we've started to have that conversation with implementing a new acronym that I've become familiar with is HQIM, High Quality Instructional Material. I think we've done a really good job these past few years of picking out some good HQIM. In math, of course, it's the Eureka Math that we use for grades K through 8. And reading, it's the Wonders, the 2020 version of Wonders. And in science, it's the Amplify Science, the model that follows the new 3-dimensional science standards. And to have the great curriculum is one thing, and now it's how to use it. And I won't get on my tangent, but it's a great opportunity. And so now it is to put those supports in place so the teachers can take advantage of. So like we had some, just to touch on it, had some great conversations about how to maybe just cut out stuff that you don't have to teach every little thing that's in there. And you can't expect mastery to happen day one of a new concept in a math lesson. That you build it, you circle back to it. But it's important to get through all those concepts and just things I would have never thought to bring up. And it's great to have that. I've also kind of got a little insight to just how much the Department of Ed is paying for this. I haven't seen a hard number yet, but it's a lot. So I did reach out to instruction partners to say, hey, what would it cost to do this exact same process Because that is like the heart of what the ARP ESSER 3 was supposed to be, was support good learning loss and curriculum and instruction. I think it's something we're probably not going, when I see that dollar amount. But we do have a backup plan in place already, and that's to use our teaching and learning people from ESU 4, particularly Jen Madison and Tara Osman, the new one. She's new this year, and they are willing to work with us. They've got enough training in this that they feel confident that they can help. And also, we will continue year 2. It's where Instruction Partners works away, but they hand it over to the ESU people and to building administrators to give those supports. So, and we've already talked, the next bullet point down, we've already talked about school website. I just wanted to have it in my report. If we skip to school calendar for next year, what typically the school calendar, we've put it forward for the board to approve at either the February or March board meeting. Obviously, it's not on the agenda for tonight. But I want to kind of plant that seed is that I feel like that's the next big, that's the next big thing for us to really turn the corner and see results, is have these structured opportunities for these teachers to work together. Use our professional development time a little more intentionally. Friday afternoons just don't work for a lot of reasons. One of them is, the reason I've stuck with it since I've gotten here is it's what I think is most convenient for parents. They're used to it. Friday afternoons are good. Mornings are terrible for parents. That's most productive for teachers. But what I can say is anytime a teacher knows that they're going to have to that they're going to have to do a combination, I think, of teaching and then turn around and professional development the same day, especially when it's in the afternoon, when you're going to lose a bunch of people for activities and those sort of things. It's just not as effective. So what we've talked about is building in maybe as much as one day a month to have these scheduled into calendars, and try to line them up with days that either are good days to have off for students because maybe they're federal holidays, or maybe low learning days. For instance, the day after the Super Bowl, which combine that with being a Monday, I just don't know that today was definitely one of those days. Everybody looked a little grouchier and more tired than what they would typically, even on a typical Monday, or the day after Halloween, sort of thing. So and the good news is Jen and I kind of got the head start on all of my neighbor schools and say, hey, hold these days for us. So between helping us with doing the same process with reading and language arts, English language arts, or following up year 2 with the math, we kind of already got some of those days earmarked. And we've talked about this as an admin team, our group that meets on Tuesday afternoons. We've talked about, what these ideas came from them, not from me. So that's what I'm going to put forward, is maybe like on Fridays, for example, go a full day on Fridays. But then in turn, maybe have a full day every month where we've talked, I know there's concerns with a 12:30 out, for example, that are we really getting any value out of the instruction in that day? This would be a way maybe to save a little on some of those things like bus routes. Don't want to do too much of that because it does take away from our hourly employees, but maximize the time that we have. And then if we still want to do 2 or 3 or 4 fundamental days, we can do that, but maybe build it into a regular day, do what we call the 2 o'clock out schedule that we're using now, and then an hour and a half at the end of the day. And then we've got that hook to get the kids to show up too. Some of the kids that admitted, there's some kids that skip those days because they don't see the value in it. And it was nice when you have a game that day, because then they have to be there to be in the game. But so you've got that hook. And so that's one of the things we've talked about as an admin team too. So if you have strong feelings about that one way or the other, you can either say it now, or you can reach out to me between now and the March board meeting and let me know if you'd have strong reservations of having a day dedicated for in-service once a month. Rather than maybe a couple early outs. I just think we would, especially when we're intentional about it and we plan it this far in advance, I think we can really utilize that. It may not be all the teachers every time, but I still think it'll be, it's kind of, you've maybe heard the metaphor of sharpening the blade. If you're always chopping the tree and you never take time to sharpen the blade, you're not, whereas if you stop and relax and sharpen the blade, you may not be chopping as long, but you're going to be more effective and efficient in the way you do that. And that's kind of the concept. Step away from teaching and make the time that we're using more valuable. Then I got on there the bullet, just the crisis team. I just wanted, when we did have the instance the week before last, when we had a student whose mother passed away in the car accident. When I found out about that early that morning, I'd heard some rumors, but I'd not received anything confirmed until that morning. We kind of we got together the teachers that are on our crisis team. Mrs. Blecka was there, Mrs. Amundsen was there. Administrators, Mr. Bloss had time to step away. Some of those that are on that team, and we just talked about. We kind of ready, not knowing if we'd really need anything, but just had everything ready to go. And then there's been kind of Bobby communicated with her about with the hospital staff and then the teachers to kind of do something, not as a school endorsed type thing, but just individuals that have kind of gone out and tried to help a family out that doesn't have a lot of connections in the community get through this difficult time. And then moving on to building and grounds, I won't talk about this, the HVAC, I just, because we'll get to that when we get to that agenda item. Budget, you have a copy of we're still in good shape with finances on hand. That's just for you to review. I don't have any specific comments that I feel need to be made about it. I won't get into all the details on the bills that I just wanted to give you a couple of details on bills out there that are kind of gaining ground. We've got a great opportunity in the legislature right now. Sometimes some of the most heated debate is when they've got money to spend and they don't know how they can't agree on how to use it. But as it has been, property tax reform is a big one. And I really think Governor Pillen has some good plans out there, the bills that he's and I think even Senator Breezy, who it's not a big deal to me, but to a lot of schools, he's kind of backed off of his hard caps on budget growth. And we've never looked at from one year to the next budget necessary increase in revenue of that much. But he softened that stance, I think, realizing that he would have to get any kind of caps in place. And then more funding. The governor has kind of really got his heels dug in on per pupil funding at $1,500 a student. Problem with that is for equalized districts like us, which most rural schools aren't, but since we're pretty landlocked in our property taxing area, we are equalized through the TIOSA formula. And so that's a resource that funnels into the formula. So it does pull us out of equalization on the model, but not by very much. So we're not going to get a lot of new revenue. I can go into the details of that, but it would be a long conversation. So in short, we wouldn't see a lot of new funding from that. Where if they don't change it, they move the SPED reimbursement, they kick it because we're at about 42% SPED reimbursement of our SPED expenses are reimbursed. It would bump it back up to what it originally was in 1990 when TIOSA went into effect, was it at 80%. That's supposed to be outside of the formula. Currently that flows into the formula, so it kind of is a wash for equalized districts like us. It would, if it went out of the formula, it would help us. It would help most of your equalized districts or your metro, like all of the big, what's called the GNSA group, everyone except for West Side is equalized. They get the lion's share of the state aid. for that reason, there's kind of some animosity by some in the legislature and maybe even the governor's office toward that. And so that's kind of what's good for big schools is kind of good for us because we benefit the same way they do. The whole TIOSA formula assumes that you should be levying in $1 in your general fund before you really get any state aid. Even our option aid flows into the formula, so we don't get any additional funding unless, like we did a couple of years ago, our option aid is greater than our equalization aid, but otherwise, typically, we don't get any new funding. We do, but not directly. It's indirectly. I won't get into the technicalities of that, but it's because it increases our total enrollment. It does kind of increase our equalization aid, generally speaking. But the long and short of that is I do think the governor's bills as a package plan are good. There is a bill out there, and it was pretty much written, or the concepts were come up with by Milford board president. His name is Dave Welsh. He's been very active. He's a retired farmer, and so he's got he's still in it, but he cash rents all his land, so he's got free time, and he loves numbers. He's been a board member there at Milford for 30 some years, board president for the vast majority of it. Very soft spoken. He's kind of annoying for some senators, I think, but in a way that more of just because he's so persistent, not because he's a super nice guy. But he's put more time into this than anyone, and he's got a really good bill, and he got Senator Brandt to introduce it. I kind of put the details in, but his goal, unlike most other bills out there, is to those schools with the highest levies, especially ag schools with the highest levies like us, they would get a bigger share of the additional aid because everyone would benefit, but the districts that need it the most are the ones with the higher levies. And it could lower our levy by over 40 cents. Would be a big deal. But the reality is it's not gotten a lot of attention by Governor Pillen because he wants his bill to go. Governor Pillen's bill probably does more to get money to rural. It's just those handful of districts like us just wouldn't see it the way that maybe a neighbor like HTRS or Lewiston would see more funding because they're not equalized. So I just throw that out there. I think it's a phenomenal bill. If it would gain traction, I might pass along some information to you, but at this point, I don't want to spend a lot of your time on it. That's LB 320. I don't want to spend a lot of your time on it if it's not realistic. So that was a lot of information. Any questions?
Okay, no questions. We'll move on to policy.
Let me do just an introduction here, kind of explain the process. So we've talked about we want to get into a cycle of reviewing policies on a 3-year rotation. So I kind of, and this isn't a hard and fast schedule because we can shift it around, but math generally says if we do 5 policies a month, either review or look for amendments that need to be made, we can get through all of them in 3 years with a little bit of cushion in there. So just simplicity purposes, I picked the first 4. And then I picked a couple others that have been a little more hot button issues. And that's our head lice and then bed bugs for the committee to review. And what I did is I took the language that was from what we have, and then I compared that to what the current recommended language, our generic recommended language is from our attorneys, the KSB school law attorney's office. And then I sent all of that out to the 3 committee members, and then they, through email, made some suggestions. And I've taken all that and I've tried to condense it into these policies. So where we're at now, just kind of give a brief overview. The general policy statement, there was a review there with really no changes. So it would just be, that's policy 1001, general policy statement. No changes, just simply a thorough review. 1002, there was some language that was different from when this policy was last reviewed by the board. One thing is it merged the language apparently from 1004 into 1002. And then one suggestion by one of the committee members was then where it shows the policies, and some of these, what review means for one policy is a little different for the next. And so one might supposed to have a hearing, one might just mean that it maybe is reviewed by a committee. But what we did is we added the numbers to those policies so we know specifically what number in our series it refers to. So that was an additional change. And then a suggestion I had was rather than just have a good old, a 3-ring binder, which we'll still do in my office, is maybe make the official copy, the one that's most accessible is what's on the website, to make that a little more as transparent as possible. Those were the major changes there. Mission. So as part of the continuous improvement process, we actually, or our early out professional development this spring, that's going to be one of the things we're going to be looking at is updating our mission statement. But for now, it's what was adopted clear back in 2011. And when that committee gets to a point that or the teachers get to a point that they want to make a recommendation for changes, it'll be brought back to the board. But for now, that would be just a review. 1004 would be just that language is kind of moved over to 102, and they don't have this number in their series. So meaning KSB School Law doesn't. So the idea is here is make sure our numbers line up with theirs. And then into head lice, some of this was language that was to be consistent with the current version. And then some of the members had suggestions on ways that we could be a little more specific and maybe a little more aggressive in our preventative measures. I don't know if I said this, I may have just thought it, but anything that's highlighted is new language. And if it's struck out as language that would be removed. So some of this is semantics and some of it is substantive. Some of it is to be a little more consistent. I think in terms of substance, the only thing we added in addition to what was in, and help me out if I'm missing anything, please. The only thing we added that was in addition to what was in the generic policy was a little more, some of the members wanted to be a little more prescriptive and a little more specific in how and who's responsible for what. And then how we communicate this out to parents. I did today send a note off on these two just because as a part of back when 2009, I think is when our one-time membership in the policy series through KSB School Law was purchased. I think it's like $15,000 or something like that. And then they continue to provide free advice. So I just sent them a note today to say, is there any legal or ethical pitfalls you see in this? Haven't heard back from them yet. So if there would be some like huge red flags, I would have to circle back to the board or the committee on that. But I haven't heard back on that. And then with bed bugs, we got a little more specific in terms of how we're going to communicate it, who does what, and maybe some of the more preventative measures that we would take. So just kind of give a general explanation of what we would do really before just we haven't really had any issues with bed bugs, or at least none that have come across my table before this year. With lice, typically what we would do is we would take the student, get them out once we became aware of it, get the student out of the classroom, notify the parents, give them a copy of the policy, give them some literature on what we do. We actually do buy the kits because that way we can help ensure that they get the treatment. That it is a cost. I think we ordered a set of 10 about a month ago, and it was about a $300 expense. But it helps ensure that the treatment that the treatment is more likely if we can just put it in a bag discreetly and send it with the parents. I think they really have not ever had a parent, and we don't make judgments based on assumed wealth. I mean, we've had some families that we might consider some of our more, if I had to guess, would be some of our more wealthy parents that this has happened to as well. And we've just, say, here, take this, use it. That way they don't have to go to the store and buy it. That way we're consistent in the way we're treating everyone. Literature is maybe helpful. A lot of the literature out there really does, it only talks about getting it out of the hair. It doesn't talk about how to treat the bigger problem. So it's really more of a conversation about how we are going to, or how you would need to, how we're going to help you with anything we can. We're not being judgmental, because that's the last thing anyone wants to hear is that we're talking down to you, rather that we want to help you. We just want to make sure that we're not creating an environment where this can spread. And we talk about how this is, you need to follow the instructions on the product to get it out of the hair, but to really prevent it from coming back, you've got to kind of address everything in the house. You've got anything that's cloth, anything that is like stuffed animals, all the bedding, coats, anything at the bare minimum, you got to run a cycle through the dryer. And the nicer and the less judgmental you can be about that sort of thing, the more effective it is. And if I'm around in my building, which is where 90% of these things happen, is more with the younger grades than the older grades, I'm the one who has that conversation with them. If I'm gone, then it would probably be the secretary. Although this does kind of address that, as if we would have a situation where the administrator was gone, then we would just want the teacher maybe to send a note home or that sort of thing in the book bag. And so that's how we would address. And so really what's in policy now is the only thing that hasn't been happening is that we've really in the past kept it discreet. Now, to the extent that we can do it and not reveal any personal student record privacy stuff, we want to communicate that to parents that might either in the same building or at least without giving away any kind of identity, just let them know that there was an instance of lice or instance of bed bugs, and we want to now we make you aware. We don't just so you know that way they can continue to monitor that situation a little more closely. I've talked a lot about that. Is there anything I've missed?
Changing the number.
Oh, right. Yeah, changing yeah. So I actually think when we adopted this was my first year, because we didn't have a bed bug policy before 2016. And I remember doing this that summer when I was trying to get 2 years worth of policy updates done in 1 year. And I didn't even know there was like a new guy, didn't know I had a whole website I could log into. And so I just took the language, I think, from lice. So now we're going back to more of the again, a lot of it says the same thing, but it's worded a little more consistent with what the original policy. And I think I just picked the opening that was in the series. And so I was off by a number in my guess. So that's to get it consistent with the recommendation. And so if we have to change 50, 65, then we need to bump early graduation also to be consistent with the KSB school policy to 50, 66 to be consistent with their series. Now, we may not always want to go into that much detail in the interest, if we're really going to hash it out at the committee level. Where there's a little more substantive changes this time, since we did touch on some hot button ones, I felt I need to at least kind of give an explanation.
I do have a question.
Sure.
On the lice.
Mm-hmm.
You said that the school provides kids to the family. Where does that come out of? Does that just
General
come out of
fund.
the general fund?
General
Is
fund
that
operating.
something that Helping Hands funds from the foundation then?
I think it could be a foundation expense.
We have to just examine it as a group.
Board approval.
I'll make a note of it for that foundation meeting.
I guess I understand, referring to KSB law for these type of things, except for when we talk about, the lice and the bed bugs. So have we looked at what is the current recommendation from the CDC or healthcare? Just because it's not definitive when they have lice.
Yeah, and that was actually, I called Brian this morning. So we are not following what they're recommending by doing it this way.
So, I mean, I definitely there are things that are issues, whatever. But I think these are more health issues that we need to look at who the experts are in those areas.
I don't know about bed bugs, but lice, it gives two options, two policy options. One is to do what we've done, the KSB school law does, and they give one, because they will always say, ultimately policy, to the extent that it doesn't violate any law or it doesn't, do anything unethical, is really a local decision. And so if you want to take the more relaxed approach, you can go this way. Take the more aggressive approach, you can go this. Usually policies that are kind of like that, they have 2 or even 3 different length options. Ours takes the more aggressive. I think there's 3, because you could even take the approach that says, if we see anything, even if it's an empty knit shell, or an empty egg shell, that if there's any, I think that's a little bit over the top. Personally, I think this is more the middle approach. We did have this conversation with our ESU4 nurse, and because she works, even the big schools, she's involved with this stuff. If she's not directly, she does the trainings for the school nurses, and that's Alicia Martin. I don't know if some of you might know. Okay, great, very helpful. But I think she said in the service unit, there's 2 or 4. We just recently had this conversation with her, meaning Tara and I did on a call with her. There's either 2 or 4 that currently they said we can't regulate it, but there's nothing. The rest of them are kind of like us. And then there's 2 of them. So there's kind of like 3 extremes. And then there's 2 of them that they treat every single instance in school, meaning they do the treatment, the combing and everything at school, or all of their instances. So yeah, that's even locally, it's all across the board. Now, which one is which, I don't know. So you've got some that just ignore it effectively, some that treat it in-house, and some that do kind of the middle ground. It will help. And we have done, and we will do those sort of things when it gets to a point, just to keep kids in school. But I don't want to go into too many of those details, because I think we'd be kind of getting into individual privacy things. But I agree with you. I think
Mary,
what this
discussion,
policy
can we
probably
we get
doesn't.
a motion for any more discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the policy committee recommendation as presented.
We'll second it.
Okay, Jason, any discussion?
I don't.
JW, any discussion?
No.
Mary, any discussion?
Okay, so we need to keep kids in school. And you're reading what the CDC recommended, that they recommended reading that night, notifying the parents that night. What school. I get it is an inconvenience when your kids get lice. Completely understand. But
And, okay, so if we're sending these kids home, and then we're sending out an all call, are we sending out an all call that if there's lice in the elementary, or are we saying, hey, there's lice in the third grade? Well, now everyone knows what third grader went home because we're not huge.
Mhm.
So now we are, targeting them.
Well,
And then that kid's not coming back the next day.
how I try to kind of walk the line there. When I've sent those messages, I've tried to say, without saying someone in third grade, say someone that you maybe send it to everyone in a certain grade, but saying someone that you're.
And if we have lice, send it to everyone in the whole school. Hey, there's lice in the school. So now everyone can look, and stuff. It doesn't matter because we've got kids, Lisa's bringing the high school over and interacting with the little kids. They all go to music. They all go whatever. That way it's just a blanket statement. Hey, here's something to be aware of.
They're on the bus together.
Well, I don't think it gets in terms of how that's communicated, I think both of those would be within the language.
But it says the classroom teacher, so that's indicating it would be coming from the classroom teacher.
That's just in the chain of command though, if Brian's not available. It was just a chain of command for who would be kind of the ones that would decide to communicate it if Brian wasn't available.
Well, this is what I think. I think this is a very polarizing issue. And I think there's people with strong opinions on both sides of the issue. And I think no matter what we do, it's going to probably make half of people on one side or the other very emotional. I think we've seen that. At this point, I will do what I'm told.
I mean, it can't be, this is just my opinion, it has to be, what is the science? What is, who, just like you're referring to the lawyers for policies, who's the experts in these situations and what they recommend is what we have to, look at least consider. If that recommendation fits with what we want for our.
And we need to do it for everything because we didn't do that when it came to COVID.
Exactly. And I thought we were stricter for lice than we were for COVID, and that really irritated me. I think anything that's medical or something with health, community health, we need to look at those experts, just like we look at our attorneys for other policies.
I think by and large, though, not to get in, but I think we tried to follow the school, when it came to the pandemic, tried to follow the advice. We got a lot of pushback for it.
I would disagree with that.
I know, it wasn't 100%.
Because I was involved with that with the hospital.
But-
yeah, we certainly weren't as aggressive as the hospital
Right.
wanted
But
us
who
to
are
be.
we
That's
looking
true.
to as that? I mean, obviously you're experts, but is it the CDC? Is it the Department of Health and Human Services? I looked at the pediatric website. I looked at the school nurse website. They all sort of lined up with the CDC. And overall, their biggest push was to educate people to be proactive. When it gets to be September, when we have hats and things, we have to start looking for this. So whatever we do on our policy, that is one thing I would like us to look into. It's on the website. If you have an issue, you've got a place to go. We link you to the CDC. We link you to the Nurses Association. We link you so that you can have that and maybe spell out, this is exactly what you're looking for. Not everybody knows. They don't know until they've had to have it in their family or seen it. You don't know. So I just want to make sure that we are not the ones that are announcing, however it may be, to a specific group that there is an issue. So I don't know if this needs to be, a couple of these policies just need to be tabled for further review, or, so that we feel like we've really done our due diligence to make sure that it's the way it should be. I was not really a big fan of the email. I know it saves us time, but it's hard for me to reply and, somebody's is a little bit later. We're not having the same kind of conversation with the same information. So for maybe certain things like this, it is appropriate to meet. That's just my opinion, or Zoom, or do something.
Well, even if we could set up something like this too, if we know, if it works for everyone and there's time, even go like a half hour or something before a meeting and have it just on those hot button issues too. Because I do think for the vast majority of this stuff, it's not, these have just been, but what I would say is this, until the board says, no, you don't send kids home. Now that's what our current policy says. That's the practice we're going to continue to follow. And I agree with you about the education. I think, I say it all the time, you can never communicate too much. And this is just one more example of it.
I know we had discussed earlier about, sending out.
Mm-hmm.
Home, send them out that,
So we'll have our app that we can send a
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
And here's your resources.
and with that, you could very easily the video, say, hey, this is what. Because you don't know what I find doing my school nursing. It's almost terrifying when you see a bug run across. But, that's even a possibility. But I think the communicating with the other staff members, or parents, I think you could send out a broadcast saying, hey, we have lice. But I know for me, I would be stripping my child at the door and having her stuff it in the dryer and be on the lookout instead of, weeks go by and she scratches her head every now and then and thinking, oh, what, we could just try to scalp or something. So I guess that's where I stand as far as the communication. I don't think that we need to even say a grade, and if we need to take this certain classroom teacher out, fine, but then have it delegated to secretary. And so the work still gets out.
I think the teacher, well, I think all of those would be consistent with our current policy. It doesn't even say anything about communication. So I think the idea is we want something communicated. It's just how we do it to be protective of the students.
Yes,
Just know
definitely,
that
but
these might come on a pretty regular basis.
that's okay.
Okay.
But also,
I just don't want to get people,
Immune to it.
immune to it, right? Because you get, and I struggle with that with COVID. Every time we had a confirmed case, like, do I send this again? And Carmen's like, yes. Until I don't talk about. I say Carmen. I don't talk to my wife about a whole lot of things, but at school, but the pandemic was one of them. And she's like, yeah, people need to know that this is still an issue. I was like, I just feel like I'm
Maybe getting the word out there more. Maybe you'll have less.
Maybe.
That should be our goal, is to, and not have the shame in it.
Right.
Because, it happens. Your kid could be a hugger and they are hugging everybody in kindergarten and they come home with it. And, it's the challenge of taking care of it and getting rid of it. And it is a bother. It is inconvenient. But, ultimately we're here our job is to protect the education of our children. And so if that means keeping them at home, we're not doing that. It feels, and
well,
I get it. I understand it's an inconvenience.
yeah. Well, I will stand by that until the board tells me not to send kids home. We're going to keep sending them home. We can probably be more effective in the way, no problem. We can be more effective in the way, what and how we communicate. But in terms of that, I just think it's, well, it's in policy right now. So until we change unless the policy changes, that's the practice we're going to continue to follow. And I know my personal opinion really doesn't matter, but I will say this, I'm probably, and some of the things I've had to deal with over the years that I never thought in a million years as a teacher that I would ever have to, like, seriously, this is like, are you kidding me? It's lies, that's my personal thing. But even now, and Steph can attest to this, even now I'm starting to get TVs with this whole bed bug thing. It's like, it must be a big deal if it's got me a little paranoid, so it is, I think we've got an issue in the community, even from a month ago, that I probably didn't really grasp.
And that's where your different opinions are gonna come in too.
Mhm.
It's the people that have dealt with it versus
Mhm.
the people that have not dealt with it.
And I think,
mean, you're never gonna.
and I
satisfy
think there's a big
everybody.
deal between the two, because I think lice is truly just an inconvenience. I think bed bugs are a lot, because they truly are sucking your blood. I mean, that's not healthy.
All right, recommendation, Brian, just an overall, the motion is to approve all of them, correct?
To approve the renewals and I don't know exactly how it's worded. Accepting the policy committee review and approving the policy committee's recommendation for change.
Well, I don't know. I would like the ones that, pulled out and looked at again with some experts, because if we're not going to look at these again for 3 years,
Mhm.
now that's
Well, and we're
now that's
Really
a lot of kids out of school.
really all we would be doing with these policies is putting into language our current practices, which even have evolved over the past few months. But so nothing is going to change in terms of practice if we don't adopt these tonight. I feel like I other than, now I've heard we need to do a better job of maybe educating. And but aside from that, in terms of how we're going to, we may try to be a little less, target specific grades and maybe look at a broader group of kids to avoid really running the risk of giving away identity. So
I think what Mary's trying to say is that she doesn't like that our policy is saying that we're sending them. I think that's what she's trying to say.
no, I know what Mary's saying. What I'm saying is it's in policy right now, and I'm not going to change until you tell me. Because then I can say, well, that's what the board told me to do. Because when you call a parent and they're chewing you out because you're sending their kid home, even though you're trying to be as nice as possible, at the end, I don't want to throw well, then the others will fall. I can assure you. That I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but at the end, when I have to play, I say, well, this is board policy. I got to do it. Yeah.
And that's what the policies are for.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Have a
absolutely.
guideline and follow it, and you have something to fall back on.
But for these type of issues, it cannot be our emotions, our whatever. It has to be, we have to follow the science.
So what I was going to say though, even if you pull these out,
There's still going to be,
in terms of practice, what we're doing is not going to change from what's really written in them. So, and then we could maybe try to find a time, like even if it's 5 o'clock before the March board meeting, because.
well, what we could identify all of the ones that are more public health type things
Mhm.
and get
There's an idea.
get some experts or whatever to have a discussion about what is a good practice and then how does that fit with us, because just because it's their best practice, that would be an ideal situations that maybe we need to put some things that make it a little bit unique or fit our situations, but I would definitely still like to have
The feedback.
from the professionals of why, so that we can, say to our public, here's why we changed this. This is what the CDC recommends. So if it is that our kids are staying in school or, and then we're sending the treatment home with them, but we're also doing this, and this to educate the parents, and we're doing this, and this, to be preventative, that type of thing, that we have a better protocol for our healthcare type things. So, yes, I know that doesn't change. I mean, so.
I think if you wanted to exclude, you could say excluding policies opposed to. Or
Some of the other ones weren't really affected by.
no, the others were, and that's what 90% of this is going to be. It's going to be. Well, these have been
You just need to update everything.
big issues. Yeah,
Yeah.
most of this hopefully will be just more matter of fact. We may tweak some things here and there, but they're not going to be as, maybe to use Mary's word, as emotionally charged as the other things.
They're just more cut and dry. It's just, yeah.
More like
Area.
general policy statement.
Yeah.
Or mission.
So,
And I intentionally grab these knowing that they're a little more time sensitive. But if we don't ultimately make a change or not make a change until a few months down the road, it's not going to change a lot right now, even if we pull them out.
so what I understand you're saying, right, is that we either vote to approve them all as presented, or we have an amendment.
Do we have a motion? I don't think we have.
Oh, I thought we
Yeah, we
did.
did.
Yeah, we did.
We have a motion, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, because remember we were talking about. Didn't I
We
get
had a
one?
motion to
Yeah.
approve them.
Can you approve them and go back and change them again?
Well, probably not after this we could, but it may not be best practice to change it right now. You maybe a motion to amend to exclude 5062 licensed knit and
65.
60.
Is it 65 now?
Yeah.
I'll amend my motion. Would
Yeah.
needs to be said.
to exclude
Exclude.
to exclude the policies, or maybe that's the way of saying exclude because numbering is just technical. It's not substantive.
Okay,
To exclude
Licensed.
licensed knits and bed bugs. Policies for licensed knits and bed bugs.
Second.
motion by Jason, second by Mary. To amend the motion to exclude licensed knit, and policies for licensed knits, yeah, just licensed knits and bed bugs. Anybody have any questions on how we're voting? All right, hearing none, we'll start with Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby. Yes. Lisa, yes. Hope,
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
We don't need to table those other ones then, do we? No.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Consider approving, where you did that?
We didn't know.
Consider approving educational foundation expenses as presented. I'll go ahead and just read it one time. Up to the following amounts of, for these areas, $700 for Salt Lake Law and to file taxes, $200 for postage and supplies, $9,000 for newsletter, $5,000 for helping hands, $1,000 for elementary PBIS, $1,000 for middle school and high school PBIS. 100% of the NCAP class cost for one class per student per semester, $100 per dual credit class for 3 classes per semester, $250 for student teacher of the year, $159.92 for Gallup Strengths, for marketing class, $256 for Golden Reader competition t-shirts, and $3,000 for Howner Egg program supplies.
I make the motion to approve the Education Foundation expenses as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Hope and.
Do you want to,
Do we
that
wanna
would
do
include,
two?
that would include scholarships too. I think if,
As for item I,
okay,
Do them separately.
you can do them together if it's not controversial, we could, because they're both presented under B, if you just wanted to read them out loud now.
Is that okay, Hope?
yeah, that's
Okay.
fine with me.
So then, 20,000 for team and renewable scholarships, 30,000 for team and non-renewable, 2,000 for Dwayne Bowman Community Service Scholarships, 2,000 for Howner Egg Scholarship, 2,000 for First Baptist Church Scholarship, 500 for the Rini UNL Marching Band Scholarship, 1,000 for the Kaiser Instrumental Music Scholarship, 1,000 for the Kaiser Music Scholarship, 150 for Bartram Elementary Ed Scholarship, 20,000 for Learn to Dream Program, 1,500 for the Lori Ann Reffman Memorial Nursing Scholarship, and 500 for the Order of the Eastern Star Scholarship.
There is one missing on that.
What is that?
It is the Virginia Chittick
Oh, yep.
Memorial, $500 for the first year and $1,000 for the second.
Was that a separate motion in the, foundation? Was it in that? I wonder.
I proved it, Brian. So
Okay.
oh, Jason, remind me the dollar amount.
500 for year one, 1,000 for year two. They were just working on they wanted to change their criteria, but they haven't been able to. So I think we're gonna end up having to not have, go with what we did last year and not have any other criteria for the current seniors.
Oh, that may have been. Okay, I think I removed it because I misunderstood that. I thought it meant that wasn't gonna do the scholarship.
That was the Lucille Bowman,
Oh, yeah.
because we lost, or we
That
didn't
one
have any
didn't make any-
gains.
Yeah, didn't make any money.
Okay. I missed it.
Okay, so motion was by Hope. Second was by Mary. Any discussion, Hope?
No.
Mary?
No.
Okay, no discussion, roll call vote, JW,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Lisa, yes, Hope,
Yes,
Mary?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes,
Motion carried to approve the foundation expenses. All right, so we'll move on to the financial report, and it should be. I know it didn't copy really well. The one with the itemized, because it's so small, I do have those, if anybody would want those. Not stapled together, but. So we'll go ahead and start with, let's just start with the custom. Let's start with the balance sheet. We'll start with that. And as Jason mentioned just a little bit, some of our investments were down, but now in the last few months, they have been recovering. So in our NPAID account, we're at $18,436.43. The foundation checking account, $36,815.16. So that brings total checking and savings to $5,251.59. And so, Bobby, I'll slow down. NPAID is a trust that we have. It's currently called PMA. I will probably forever call it NPAID because it's just managed by a different organization now. So I need to get that changed. But we just are able to hold money in there. And so as we get our fundraising done for the band trip, or not band trip, the DC trip, we'll be putting money in there just to make sure it's there. And so as we go through, when we have that total amount for those kids that are going, then we'll just tuck that money away in there so it's easy to access and we can get that funding to them when they need it. So we go through our assets. The Bowman Scholarship, that fund is at $81,622.28. So that is a scholarship that we can award to any senior that goes through the process. Typically, what we've been able to do, we can only take the income from that. We can't touch the principal. So with our downs this year, we're not going to be able to give that scholarship out. Fine arts and foreign language is at $172,222. So we use that for fine arts or foreign language funding. We've been able to, we can't touch the principal on that either, but we've been able to, we'll go through what we spend it. So if Mrs. Bloss has a request, if music has a request, if foreign language, which we do online, but if there's a request for something special, that's what that money would come out. First Baptist Church is a scholarship. Foundation General Unrestricted is our general fund that we can pull for things like the DC trip, the Teacher of the Year, those types of things typically come out of that. Then we also have a CD for the same fund. So it can be used the same way, we just are holding that. Order of the Eastern Star Scholarship is a scholarship for $500 each year, so we just hold that in a money market at Jones. Breckman Scholarship is held the same way in a money market. The scholarship account is a combination of several accounts that we had, and I've started to draw out. So the Dwayne Bowman, the Hunter Egg will be drawn out of there because they're not big amounts, and that the total scholarship fund is doing well enough to do that. Team 1 and Team 2 are both Team accounts, so the majority of our scholarships come out of one of those funds. Then Virginia Chittick, that scholarship was started by her family, and so that's also held in the money market at Edward Jones.
That's what was in their will.
Typically it is, yeah.
So you don't get to decide.
And it's not consistent.
No.
So it's a whole
No.
book in itself of what we can and can't do. So as you see, our total assets are $1,618,016.24. And we are down. Our net income is negative. So, but as I said, they're recovering, and that's sort of the risk that we put ourselves into by funding them at Edward Jones. But still, we are gaining. We've gained. I didn't look up the numbers since that account, the scholarship account, and those other things. We've still are way ahead of where we were when we started, and able to give a substantial amount every year to our kids.
Like
And
the Bowman account, the one that we lost money on. I mean, we ended the year at 81,000, and we're already up to 90-some, 92. I think last time I looked, but we're gaining. We have to get that one back up to 106,000 minimum, and then anything above that is.
yeah, so that's just something that Jason's really good about helping me watch, and we just do our best to comply with what the wishes of the families were for that. So then if we go to the custom summary report, this just is a consolidation of the report of our expenses and our income. So as we look at direct support, that is the category that if we get a donation, we had a backpack drive. If we have a fundraiser for the DC trip, which we are going to have to do some type of a fundraiser to keep that going. That's where I just direct that money to that place. So backpack fundraiser was $7,425. The Chittick, so that would be a donation to the Chittick Foundation. Jack did another donation, and so that's what those are. Then just other individual business contributions. So those are itemized in the detailed report. So then investment, so change in investment value, This would be for this, the CD that we have for the general fund. That was the growth there. And then the interest savings is the NPAID or the TMA account. That's a little bit of interest that we get from that. So that's our total income is $15,863.79. So then as we look at grants and awards, cash awards, and you'll see those itemized, they are the backpack teacher of the year, classroom things. Mrs. Gira, this year she asked for the strength finder codes. That's where that would come out for things for her kids that are in. It's not called, what is it called? Sower, whatever.
Reading,
her-
yeah.
What is it now?
Golden Swords.
Yeah. And so that's where that comes out of. Dual credit, you'll see a big list of dual credit because we have a counselor that is really awesome and is getting those kids to utilize that money. And so that's either SENCAP or dual credit. And we take that out of the Teeman scholarship because that money is a scholarship money, and so that it can be pulled out of that. Eastern Star is just the scholarship that was set up by that organization. Oh gosh, PBIS, those are the things that they do for their awards and different things, fine arts and foreign language. We'll just look at how some of that money is used on the itemized part. There was tickets to a play, the H2L LED lights, a lot of things in the auditorium if we can pull out of there. You know, we all are aware of the condition of the auditorium. So if we can do those things, because they have awesome events there, and it's just nice to have the best facility that we can have, and the working lights and all those things. One act, then when Angela did the ornament project, that's where that money came out of. Just some different one act lighting and different things that Laura used for one act, costumes, those types of things. So then we go to the Baptist Church scholarships. So that's the scholarship, foundation scholarships, counter ag, if you want to look at that. Mr. Bloss will need supplies for the ag room. Typically it's the ag class that we use those things for. So it just depending on what his needs are. Welding supplies, disposable supplies, gloves, hand tools, that type of thing. And that is just dependent on sort of what he needs at the time. High school and junior high PBIS are those things that they do. Mr. Nis talked about doing to encourage those kids, learn to dream. So those are scholarships that kids that qualify for Learn to Dream can use that either as a high school student or as a college student. And the funds are matched by the SDC Foundation. So our funds, they manage all of that for us. I just have to, Lisa sends the application to them to tell them that they're qualified, and then we just write a check for the number of kids that are approved. And so that money is held there. And so I will be calling and asking their director, Michelle, about where we're at with our account there to see where we're at. Lucille Bowman, those were scholarships that were given out, team and non-renewable and reoccurring. The difference is the non-renewable is a one-time scholarship to those high school seniors. That money is divided on a percentage of the points that how they're ranked. So it's a system that actually Brian helped us a lot to develop that. And I think it's really, if you knew where scholarships began and where we are now, it's amazing. And that's been a team effort. Brian's helped us with the formula. Jason does a great job, and Mary's right there helping us. Hannah's done some stuff too with scholarship stuff too, so it's great. So then reoccurring are the ones that are 4-year. As long as they meet the criteria, they get $1,000 after fall semester of their first year and then on. So that's what that is for. Awards and grants, other. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Oh, like apply to college that we did for Mrs. Blecka is where that one was this year. Accounting fees, Stellix do all of our filing that we have to take care of to maintain our 501c3 postage and mailing. That's huge because we do the newsletter. That's a really big expense and only to get more expensive. So we've talked about different things we can do with that. We haven't really come up with a plan to.
Well, with this new system, we may,
What was that?
with this new system we're doing, we may go to more online stuff. Have a need,
Yeah.
but we still have the older people that,
To do.
read it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a thing we discuss every
Yeah,
year. So then
absolutely.
supplies, there's new checks. So change in value, all that is listed there. So if you have any questions for me, and if you want to see a better detailed one, I can give you one after the meeting, because that got really small, the print, I didn't realize it didn't copy very well. You guys have any questions? It's definitely a team effort, and the foundation is sort of a quiet group that really does a lot for our school, and it's a pretty dedicated group of people. So if you ever have a chance to serve on that, it's rewarding, but it's a commitment. It's a big commitment. All right. Don't have any questions. Do we have to accept that? I just presented, don't I?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be approved.
So then consider renewing the Board of Education's membership in the Nebraska Association of School Boards for 2023, 2024 for $3,720.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mary, second by Bobby. Any discussion, Mary?
Yeah.
Bobby? Okay, hearing no discussion, we will vote. We'll start with Bobby.
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Hope?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
JW?
Yes.
The motion carried 6-0. We will move on to consider approving the low bid submitted for upgrades to the vocational, agriculture building to be paid from the, or with the ESSER funds as presented. So you have a motion.
I'll make a motion so we can discuss.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jason, second by JW. Jason, do you have anything right off?
Not on Friday.
How about JW?
Nope.
Okay, we'll let Brian, would you mind
Well,
over?
yeah, sure. There's no reason that I can't think, that I wouldn't think that the low bidder is not, I can't remember who I all sent, if I sent it to everyone or just the committee members, but I read the rules in the federal guidelines on this. And my understanding is you kind of have to go with the low bidder as long as you determine that they are responsible. I can't remember the exact terminology, but responsible, and that was the most important one. It was the way the bid was put out. So if we don't have a reason to think that the low bidder was the responsible bidder, then I think we are obligated to go with them, which of course we would want to do anyway, because it's we want to go with the low bidder. A few of them did come in. Well, I take that back. A couple of them, we had some numbers kind of to work with before the bid was ever put out. And I shared those estimates last month, and they were and some of them were estimates, and some of them were just truly guesses. Like I was far and away the had no idea what electrical and lighting would be, and that was reflected in the difference between what was submitted and what I put in my estimate. I do think there was some markup because of you have to comply with the Davis-Bacon stuff, and so they have to mark stuff up to cover their the additional expenses to comply with the federal guidelines. But really the HVAC and the welding and air pollution control were around that same range that were in the estimate. Didn't know what to expect with the windows. But I really felt like we got good exposure. I put it in a plan house. I think I talked about that last meeting. So it went in a big one for government programs based out of Lincoln and Omaha. That got a little bit of exposure because I had some people call, put it in the Omaha World Herald. Did we do? Yeah, I did the Lincoln Journal Star as well. Of course, the local paper. Did some personal, I was hoping we'd get a window bid from AHRS. They helped me out with coming up with some of the specs for those windows. I guess those are what are called storefront windows. It's a special kind of window that goes into cinder block walls like that. But they didn't end up submitting a bid, but they did help me come up with getting the specs. So I talked about Matheson Linweld. The welding and air pollution control was actually submitted by Custom Heating or Cooling and Heating, which was the company that when they initially were going to do the project, they were going to use Brad Ullman as their fabricator, but they ended up being in reverse because he had more experience with the federal using federal funds and complying with all the rules. So he actually submitted the bid and he's going to purchase his stuff from Matheson. But he was the low bid there. He was also the low bid for the HVAC. In the packet, there's actually in front of all of these, there is a kind of a summary of what was submitted. It'd have been right after the foundation report and the NASB proposal. So we got 2 bids for electrical, 2 for HVAC, 2 for welding and air pollution control, and then 1 for the windows. So the total then would come to, for those 4 projects, $412,861. That is more than I estimated, but again, some of those were just guesses. If you're at that page in the packet, if you turn to the next page, it kind of shows where we're at with these ESSER funds. So the ESSER 2 have to be obligated by September 30th, and then I think we have to make the payment by end of December. I did talk to Brad Ullman with Custom Cooling and Heating today, and he didn't think that he thought that timeline would be reasonable. The Camfill's made in the U.S., so I think he's hoping to be able to get done with that by the end of summer. Lead time he thought was end of September for the compressors and the materials for the HVAC. He said that's about a 2-week process. So he didn't think getting things wrapped up by middle of December would be a problem. Worst case scenario, Steph and I have kind of talked about this a little bit with the ESSER funds. If we had to, I could take a bunch of, if we're running short on time, we could take a bunch of expenses that we're probably going to put on ESSER 3 and put it on ESSER 2 and then move stuff around only if we have to, for a few reasons. One, it'd be a lot of unnecessary busy work, but more importantly, ESSER 2 was still passed before the elections, the 2020 elections, and so when the Republicans were still in charge, and wasn't as much money, but it was a lot fewer strings attached. And so it's kind of nice to not have as many strings attached to claiming that money back. The ESSER 3 then would altogether for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, we had $789,800 awarded to us. Money that we've already spent is $130,899 pending. It's been claimed, but we got to make some amendments and then it'll come back. So the total then for the VOAG project would be $412,861. For the Apogee that was on the agenda and we did end up approving was $14,010. So that leaves, I didn't put the difference in there, but it's $230,000 roughly. So that leaves some money still to do some other things like curriculum support, A few things I've thought about is maybe an activity bus. That's, I think it's the air conditioning that is the reason we can justify that expense. We'll discuss that probably more at the building and grounds level. And then these are just at guesses on the 144,000 for like a full length activity bus with bucket seats, air ride and AC. That's a pretty hard number based on what I got back from Bluebird. I still need to reach out to Thomas to get a comparable number there. The security cameras, that's just a guess, and so is the curriculum stuff. But it just kind of gives us an idea of how those remaining funds might be able to be spent. And we might go a total different direction too. But I just wanted to let you know that there is still of that money that was allocated. There's still money to be spent. So I think we're good moving forward with this project.
Is there potential it could be more than 412,000?
I don't think so. Well,
Because I noticed some of them said like a 5% increase on the bonds.
but the bond is on them, I believe. And I did have the attorneys make sure that all the pieces were there. He said everything was good other than the draft contract that they provide, I think said $5 million in liability coverage, and two of the vendors only had 4 million. Shouldn't be a problem, given the dollar amount we're dealing with. And that, he said, wasn't a problem. It's just something that would have to be amended in that sample language before the contract was sent out.
So like on this first one, on the electric, towards the bottom, he has exclusions, control wire, and then he lists things. So is that stuff that he has excluded that will be additional costs?
So the control wires should come with the HVAC equipment. We discussed that. And so he just wanted to make sure he had it in writing.
So that's my question. So do these contractors, is there a general contractor that's going to
No.
oversee this whole project?
No.
So these guys are just going to have to communicate with each other to make sure we're getting the electrical where we need it for the HVAC and to wire our welders.
But look how much we saved by doing it that way.
I've been on projects where
I know.
they didn't have a general contractor, and in the end, you don't save. But I mean, are these companies that know each other, that do we
Well,
have?
these would have,
Well, absolutely.
but
Yes, like this one and this one is what I'm asking. That would probably be the main thing, is the electrical and the HVAC.
they've worked together, I know.
These have.
In fact, he was his top reference. If you look at his references, and that was, he says, well, yeah, if you go with, because he was here for the bid opening.
Okay.
Tanner Goes was for the bid opening. He says, yeah, I've worked with Brad all the time. He's really good. So
That was with the windows and the electric. So it's definitely the electric and the HVAC need to communicate well with each other.
So I guess my question is if it goes over,
Mhm.
or there's potential of it going over, is that still is the whole amount still going to be covered by ESSER funds?
Yes, we've got at least 230,000 additional cushion in there, even after money that's already been spent. Honestly, if we don't move forward with this project, we're gonna have to start getting really creative in how we spend this money.
Because we're gonna lose.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was the whole entire amount was, I didn't know what the stipulations for, I knew you had said ESSER fund sometimes had stipulations of
Lots.
what we can use it for or not
Mhm.
use it for, so I wasn't sure if the whole entire project was gonna be covered.
Yes, the whole entire project, we have to spend our money, and then what we'll probably do is, what I will suggest is we'll pay for all this stuff out of building fund. And then we'll reimburse it back into building fund since we have enough in there. You can't do depreciation. So it either has to be building fund or general fund. It just makes more sense to use building fund to me, because we typically don't dip into that fund very often. And so it doesn't, we've got good cushion right now in general fund, so we could go that route too. But then it gets into things like it makes it look like you spent a lot more money than you actually did, which some people will only see that once when it's published in the paper, and they'll assume that we're spending like, you know, more than we should, when really it's just we're using it as a revolving fund. But they don't give us the money to spend. We spend our money and then they reimburse us for it. But yes, to answer your question. So where was it? Where did it say about on the bonds? It said there-
Well, not very top, but like the bid bond, it says bond amount 5% of the.
no, that's what. So
What they-
that's what they're insuring us for.
Okay.
So that's what a bond, so what they have to have two bonds. And I think both are covered in the same stamp. So they have to do one of two things. One's a state requirement, one's a performance bond. So they have to, for the performance, they have to be able to back up their work. For the bid bond, they have to either give us a check that's a cashier's check or a certified check that's 5% of their bid, meaning they have to be able to have 5% of their liquid assets freed up, tied up in a check that and we will never cash it unless they walk away. And if they walk away, we get this money. So a bid bond is it's kind of like someone who does, you know, like a
Bales bonds.
bails bond. Thank you. I couldn't think of the term. Yeah. So they're gambling. They're saying we trust you. We're going to ensure you that you're not going to walk away from this project. But if they do walk away, then that company, that bond insurance pays us 5% of their bid. Yeah, I learned about this stuff. So no, so that would be that's what we're getting. If they walk away from the project, the assumption through federal guidelines is that that's going to be an expense to us and a financial hardship to us. And so we get 5% of that, of our expense, probably to help us cover the costs associated with finishing the job.
Is there any way that like we get going on a project, we pay for it all, and then it's not approved?
It's conceivable. That was my biggest fear.
Even if it's 10% of the 400-some thousand that we're spending.
That's my biggest fear. Not meaning I don't think it's a high probability, but that's, you know, part of the reason why I wanted to make sure we did this process right, because I didn't want to have that situation. So conceivably, yes. Worst case scenario, I just want to put it out there, say we've had the conversation, because I know we talked about all this stuff with the gym, but I know for sure the two of you weren't here when is that we could do it. Department of Ed would look it over. They'd give us the money, and then a year later, the feds would come in and do our desk audit and say, well, you didn't comply with that and that, you've got to pay the money back. I think there's so much money that has gone out for this thing I think we're in good shape. Is it conceivable? Yes. I don't think it'll happen. I mean, because we've done everything they've told us to do. We've checked every box through the process. But to answer your question, yes, it is conceivable. I know there have been schools that they've said that have kind of not really just jumped into projects and not really followed the Davis-Bacon guidelines. And so they've had to go through and like they've used the local, so they've gotten reimbursed for it, but I think they had to kind of find a middle ground in the cost, or they had to pay them what they would have paid the Davis-Bacon rate and then claim the additional funds. Because they want to make sure if you're a skilled laborer, you're getting paid that minimum rate that you're entitled under the law. That goes all the way back to President Hoover at the end of his presidency with the Great Depression.
And they're looking to start as soon as they can. Some of these guys.
I'm waiting for one more form to get stamped by Department of Ed. hopefully tomorrow. And as soon as that happens, I'll add in the language, all the specific language and the content on the contract, send it off to the attorneys to make sure there's nothing. And then I'll sign and send to them, and they'll sign and they'll get stuff ordered.
And so Brian, for those in the public that might say, why don't you just put up a new building? Can you just explain why that isn't feasible with
Well,
this money?
One, you can't build a structure with money. I've heard that said both ways. I mean, if you're going to, I'm pretty sure though that's pretty hard language that you cannot build a wall with this money, meaning a new external wall. Like if I want to build more classrooms for social distancing, pretty sure there's specific language in the law that says you can't do that. Secondly, it would be over $2 million to build it. I mean, look what Lewiston went from $500,000 to $2 million just over the last few years on their project, just as prices have skyrocketed and doubled and tripled on some of these materials. So that's the other reason, is that we wouldn't touch it.
Utilizing what we have, making it better. Lots better.
I think the windows are good. Now you asked, will there be other? There might be things that would be in addition to this that we would want to do, like replace the doors that are in really bad shape. The rust is almost so bad on them that they're
Paint in the
Paint the
classroom.
walls, yeah.
And those are all things that were listed in that as exception.
Yeah.
It said
Yeah.
paint, things like that. But I
Those things
just was mostly concerned that if we went quite a bit over that.
these are hard bids. That's why they
that
build
we
it.
Wouldn't covered by the ESSER funds, but if.
No,
it can all
about
be
230,000.
covered,
Yeah.
That's not a concern.
And they put fluff into their bids. You know, it's kind of, on one hand, they want to get the bids, they want to go as low as possible. On the flip side, they don't want to, because they're bound by
Short
that bid. Yeah.
themselves, right.
Protect, yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, a roll call vote. Lisa, yes. Oh,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Motion carried 6-0. All right, consider approving full-time teacher contracts for Emily and Gina.
Agina.
Agina.
I did the
I
same
knew I
thing.
was gonna do it. Beginning in the school year 2023-24 as presented.
I will make that motion.
But I'll second.
Motion by Mary, second by Jason. Mary, any discussion?
No. Very excited.
Jason?
No.
Anybody else have any discussion? We're thankful. Science teacher coming. Okay, hearing no discussion, roll call vote. Hope,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby.
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Motion carried 6-0. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Hope, second by JW. Roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby.
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Hope.
Yes.
Adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Okay, I give you that other stuff.
Well, you know, I try to, hey, I'm trying to back up.
I'm
See if I
gonna-
can work for it.
That goes in.
Am I right? I don't know.
I thought about that earlier. Get a bigger one.